going on, guys? It's your boy Luke here with our round 2 live stream for the Farmers Insurance Open. Gonna get you ready for all of your exposure on Friday, both from the DFS and the prop and the betting side of things. Going through a weather report, ownership for DFS, also some shots gained metrics and building a pool for the DFS and the betting side of things. That'll be about it. But then when we look at the prop and the betting side, we'll be going through some averages, course conditions for Friday, as well as the underdog and price pick sports to try and find some value. So anything on top of that you're curious about, feel free to go ahead and let me know in the live chat, whether it's player deep dives, anything strategy based. We're also going to go through some matchups as well. I meant to throw that out there too. But yeah, a lot to talk about here over the next hour or so. I see we've already got a lot of you in the live chat, and looks like it was a pretty good day from some of the comments that we've got. So let's see if we can run it back for Friday. For me, truly, ended up being a well below average day. I really should have done better with how we set up for it. But you can tell, right? We were on the right track, obviously, and you guys must have done better with the execution side than me. So we'll see if we can continue that momentum and to go out there and profit for round 2. You got rushing yard, yeah, mentioning the North course played easy today. That was for sure, and we took advantage of that with the Higo lean. He said Cebu seems like a smash for sure. That -4, the harder course, is hard to overlook, especially with how he did it. We're going to deep dive some of the stats on that later. Michael Dolan says the smash a like button, and he had a great day in Showdown thanks to me. He said, first off, thanks for the shout on that. And yeah, smash a like button if you guys haven't already. Phil says he did decent, but he changed from 30% Lauer to Shank. Yeah, dude, the second guessing after the fact's not great. And that's personally why I don't tinker whatsoever. So maybe that's something you should change in your process. Changing, it feels like it doesn't work out 90% of the time. So I just stopped doing it entirely. Do I think because the guys played so bad on the South course that people will be scared to take them? Yeah, we'll talk about that from the ownership angle, but the guys that played terribly will be a little bit lower owned for round 2 Showdown. You said you smashed the lineups today, but ADDC got you. Yeah, still decent day, though. You can't complain about that. Got James Romanowski down there as well. You notice that the guys that are -4 or better on the South course had inflated shots gained putting stats. How would I use that info for Friday? It doesn't change anything. The reason why the guys at the top had good putting stats is that you have to putt well to go low on the PGA Tour. So you don't read into that too much. I mean, if you look at any round on the PGA Tour and the guys at the top, it's almost always going to be guys that are gaining with the putter. So yeah, nothing there, man. But let me know if you have any other questions. He said Seamus went low in the South course. Yeah, he had a -6 from McGreevy. He was notable. And Siwoo Kim went low. Michael Thorbjornsen, who I bet this week, shot -4 at that course. So my opinion, guys, -6 from McGreevy is first off more impressive than the -10 for Justin Rose. And some of those -4s, -3s at the South course are the guys that are truly in contention at this point. And more on that here in a second. But yeah, man, some really impressive score, especially with how hard it was at the South course. Great to be playing DFS. Thankful for all that I do. Appreciate that. And let's get after it for tomorrow. But let's hop on into this thing for round 2. So we're going to start with a look at the averages because it's going to dictate everything for round 2 Showdown. The South course played plus 0.48, so over par, which for a major championship course is just the status quo around here. It's always going to be the case. And that was with perfect weather today. And then the North course, I called this yesterday. I told you guys, do not touch the South course with a 10-foot pole. It played over 3 strokes easier. Now, last year, it was closer to a 0.9 stroke difference, but that's because the North course was super windy. I mean, both of them were, but anytime it's going to be much harder scoring, you're not going to get that kind of a differential. So this is what we're used to seeing at this event, usually a 2 to a 3 stroke difference between the two courses. And at almost 3.25 shots between the two golf courses, this is as drastic as it's really ever been. So for your round 2 Showdown lineups, only play guys at the North course. I think it's pretty straightforward. You don't touch any of those guys at the South course because even some of the best rounds of the day were like -6 for McGreevy, a -4 for Siwoo Kim. You had people blowing that away all day on this North course. So birdie average was 1.35 higher per round over there. Bogey or worse average was significantly lower too. You had more birdie streaks, more bogey-free rounds made at the North course. Every single metric you could possibly think of was favorable there. And the weather also looks very similar to what we had for Thursday. Sub 10 miles an hour of sustained wind the entire time, but it does get slightly gustier towards the very end of play. And that was what we had for today. In fact, if you break it down by the first versus second half of tee times, some databases have that functionality available. Bet the number does too. You would find that the first half played about 0.3 strokes easier than the second half at both golf courses. So the South course, it was about a 0.32 shot difference. I think it was like 0.29 strokes difference for the North course from side to side. So I would say we obviously want the guys at the North course. That is readily apparent. But if you want to shade towards the guys that have earlier tee times, then that could also be something that we're looking at from the conditions standpoint. And it makes sense from the logic standpoint, not just with a little bit of stats that we're looking at. We always have to ask ourselves whether that's noise or whether that's legit, especially when it's only like a 0.3 stroke difference. But I would say that because it was consistent across both golf courses, it wasn't just one course that played easier than the other in the first half. That's a little bit more believable. And when we think about it, you have more receptive greens at the first half of the day. And POA, which is the type of grass that these guys are putting on this week, is notorious for butting throughout the day and getting bumpier and harder to putt in the afternoon. So we would expect that to make things a little bit harder for those players. So I would expect a similar type of dynamic for tomorrow, but not a big enough edge to only go after the morning guys. And it's really, I think, where it's only valuable if you're around to showdown process, or at least where I used it myself, was if I was trying to decide between some 6K players, one that was going off super early versus one that was going off super late. If everything was equal except for the tee time situation, then I went with the guy that was going off early. And out of my player pool of, I think it was like 38 players, give or take a couple in either direction from that number, there was only one player that I actually had to do that with. So this is a very small part of your process, but you guys know there are no stones that go unturned on this live stream and with this channel. And that's what you'd say for the conditions for round number 2, that it looks very similar to round 1. The pin locations, by the way, will be within one pace of where they were for the first round. So these golf courses aren't going to change identity, and in particular, when the weather forecast looks as consistent as it is. So that's the main thing heading into Friday. But the next thing we want to look at would be the ownership for the top 20 players. And that is always the biggest edge that we have for Showdown, and in particular for rounds 2 and 3, where we don't have placement points. And if you didn't know, rounds 1 through 3 Showdown, I said rounds 2 and 3 because we're already past round 1, but it's also the case for Thursday, is that there's no placement points involved with your scoring. So it's about your birdie production. Birdie streaks may be a bogey-free round. That's giving you an extra bonus. But the vast majority of what we care about is what happens tomorrow. How somebody played today has no bearing on their situation for round 2 Showdown. And excuse me there as I had to cough, but that means that some of these guys that are getting some extra steam in your round 2 Showdown lineups, in particular the ones that just played well for today, are probably not worth it in a lot of cases. So that's why we're going to go through the ownership. And because golf is such a volatile sport, in particular when it's just an 18-hole sample size like what we have here, you want to be playing against the rest of the field. You want to know where they're going with their lineups, because in most cases, with everyone not named Scotty Scheffler, if they're 30 to 50% owned, then that's not a good thing for their lineups and for your long-term EV using them. So I'm going to catch up on chat. Then we're going to go through the top 20 in the ownership here. By the way, this spreadsheet that you're looking at right now is from my Patreon page. If you guys want to download this with all my projections, also my entire player pool, you guys can do so via the Golf DFS tier on my Patreon. Link in the description to go out there and check that out. But let's catch up on chat, and then let's go through where some of the steam is going. What's going on? Mr. R. Klein, he said, with you, Luke, the tournament would be 100 times better if it was just at the South course. Yeah, man, because after round 1, I'm losing all the money in DFS. But when I look at my plays on the South course, they all played half decent. Like, I mean, a Xander shot +1, which was a little bit worse than average. But like the vast majority of the guys I used on that side shot like even the -2. And I'm getting absolutely fucking boat raced with my lineup. So yeah, that's why I started off with like, I hope it's going better for you guys than it is for me, but we'll see how it is after tomorrow, because I've got a sneaking suspicion that after those guys play the North course and can get me some -5, -6s, that it's going to be a different tune heading into the weekend. So yeah, that's the main reason I say that. Also, it's just a better golf course. I think a better test of golf. And it completely clouds people's judgments. Like, I'm sure there's people that think they're winning all the money right now that are sitting in first place in the GPPs. That's probably the worst place that you could possibly be at this event after round 1. So we'll see how it all shakes out, though. You got your lunch handed to you today. Yeah, me too, man. I don't know why, but it seems like the rest of chat seemed to do well with what we had on the live stream. So yeah, you and me, I think we're due for the bounce back tomorrow. You said leverage Ludwig or not so. Yeah, I actually used some Ludwig myself in a few lineups, but luckily he was my lowest exposure play at the top end of the board. Yeah, you could get to some leverage on him, a little bit of a bounce back. It's because of the stats too. So we'll go through that. It was mostly short game that held him back there. But yeah, I feel you on that, Zach. It was a weird start to the week, but hey, it's not every slate's going to be a good one. I've been very, very spoiled this year. I think I've had all but 2 losing days all this year, and we've had now 9 full slates to this point, 7 winning slates and 2 losing slates. I'll take that all year, so it's okay. I know we're spoiled, but we'll get the bounce back. He said Finau had some flashbacks to the Masters today. He had the walk-off ace, no reaction. Yeah, I don't think he saw it go in, so it wasn't quite the walk-off like you had at the Masters, but yeah, it was pretty sweet. His playing partner saw it go in because they turned around and were like, hey, man, you just made an ace. And then he reacted, but that was pretty cool. By the way, that hole was 220. Front pin, one of the hardest par 3s on the PGA Tour. He makes an ace. That is some mighty fine, impressive stuff. Kiefer or Pot Gator, I actually like both of them tomorrow retail. Shots gained section, we're going to deep dive both of them, so I'll save it for that. Same here. Yeah, man, that's the thing with round 1 at this event is that's the thing. Even Zach, we could be totally fine after tomorrow. We just don't know it. And it's that uncertainty that kills me. So trust me, you're not alone if you're feeling that way. Could Rose sneak a win or Matsuyama? I'm hoping Matsuyama does because I bet him. So one of the guys that nuked on the North course, but could Rose win? For sure. He's got the most leads at this event of anyone over the last 10 years, the most rounds with a lead. It's a stat I saw before we got on here. Yeah, great course history. And not a surprise that he nuked the North course. That is typically what he does at this event. He goes super low there, and then he struggles at the South course. So we'll see if that changes for him. The off the tee fit isn't the best. Could he sneak win, though, for sure? You said Akshay needs a day tomorrow. Yeah, me too. I have got some Akshay shares. Luckily, he's playing the easier course, and the cut line's looking like it'll be -2, maybe -3, I would say. Probably closer to the -2 mark. So needs to have a day, but he can get there. He said that ace lost you $250. Yeah, must have been a big showdown swing for you. But I can't imagine that lineups were very good with the Tony Finau in it. So that's got to have been like a one lineup that passed you, right? And that made you lose $250 because I can't imagine too many lineups of Tony Finau were doing very well. So and especially for round 1 showdown at the harder course, who's using Tony Finau? It doesn't really make sense. But let's go through the ownership at the top end of the board here. So, and what you'll notice on this Friday course tab is that there's no one playing the South course in this ownership except for Hideki Matsuyama. And that's because people have brains. People aren't complete bots. And as much as I'd like them to be bots and to be playing against, some 40, 50 IQ dumb fucks in our large field GPP lineups, the vast majority of them are closer to 60 to 70 IQ. So, they have got at least some sort of a brain to know to play the North course guys. And also because they like looking at the leaderboard, they maybe don't do their full deep dives. The people that are building lineups on the shitter, they're going to play the guys that played well. So for example, Siwoo Kim, anyone that's under par that played the South course is going to get nuked to oblivion. And this is the large field GBP exposure. So just know that guys like a Cam Young, a Siwoo Kim are going to get way, way more steam in single entries and a lot of smaller field GPPs. In fact, you could be looking at 40, 45% ownership on a Cam Young. Maybe you're looking at close to 40% ownership on a Siwoo Kim and those sort of formats too. And guys that struggled after round number 1 could get squeezed in those kind of formats because this ownership isn't just going to pop out of nowhere. It has to come from other players. And I think it'd be guys like a Xander Schauffele. He shot +1. He had a slightly worse than average round, but all things considered, it really wasn't that terrible form-wise. And what you'll see with some of the shots gained metrics is that he really struggled off the tee. That was the main thing that held him back. I think he hit 3 fairways out of the 14. So if he cleans that up, it could be a much better round for him. But these guys, even like a Cantlay that shot even par, are going to get a little bit overlooked compared to their peers. And Ludwig Gobert still getting some ownership because he's at the top end of the pricing, but he's only 18.9% owned. And in the large field GPPs, he's still about half the ownership of a Cam Young, a Siwoo Kim. But in those single entries and some of the smaller field GPPs where people don't take as many chances, somebody like Gobert could be sub 10% in some of those contests, is closer to 40, even 50% on these top tier players. So in large field GPPs, there is still leverage to be had on some of these players, as you can see. And that's the ones that kind of struggled in each different price range. But I think in the right kind of contest, the one, especially like $100 plus single entries where people really tend to become nits. They don't like to take chances in those sort of contests. And it makes sense. It's just kind of the psychological impact of playing for a higher dollar amount, right? People become pussies. They become soft when they're playing for higher stakes. By the way, if you can fight that urge to do so, it will pay you off handsomely if you're going out there and building lineups. Because if you're willing to take on that risk and you get it right with somebody shooting a -5, a -6 at the easier golf course, you're going to be sharing that player with less people. And may I remind you that it's only been one round this week. all the guys that we actually want to use for tomorrow played a very difficult golf course, and now they're playing a cupcake course. And the reason why the North course is easy is it still has the 4-inch rough. It's still kind of hard from the bogey standpoint, but you've got 2 drivable par 4s. You've got 4 easily reachable par 5s. At the South course, the only one of them is easily reachable, and that's the 6th hole. The 6th hole, which is 565 yards at the South course, would be the longest par 5 that you have at the North course. And that's if they tip it out. The North course, we don't know if they're tipping it off or not, but if they move it up a tee box or 2, some of those par 5s are sub 500 yards. And that's why like a Justin Lauer, for example, made 2 eagles. And Justin Lauer is not an eagle guy. Like I can drive the ball within 10 to 15 yards of a Justin Lauer. And I'm not a big hitter by any means, even though I'm a big guy. But these guys on tour that are now going to that North course can go out there and absolutely nuke. And, if you can take a chance on somebody that's a little bit lower owned, it's going to give you that game theory edge. And especially if you're taking them in the right sort of contest where people won't take chances on some of these guys like an Aubert, it could be even bigger leverage than what you're seeing here. So that's the top end of the board. We have guys like Ryan Gerard sneaking up there as well. It's mostly 9 to 10K guys that we have in this top 10. But Gerard was about 20% owned in GPPs this week, so he's still getting some steam at about 23%. I've got a Taylor Pendrith also getting some steam as well. And what you can't see here, because I have this sorted by the ownership tab and this column F, is that there's a big hole of NC guys in the 8K range. There's a whole bunch of guys playing the South course there, the harder of the 2, whereas up top in like the 9, 10K range, there's a lot of guys playing the North course, which is the one that we want. So the byproduct of that is that guys like Gerard and Taylor Pendrith are even chalkier than they otherwise would be, because usually chalk for us in the 8K range for round 2 showdown is like 14, 15%. So like that's somebody getting a little bit of extra steam. These guys now that are over the 20% mark could be close to 30% in some of those single entry formats. So, and I would say that these guys are even bigger candidates than some of those other guys up top to get the steam in single entry, because when you're playing for higher stakes, you're usually a little bit more educated. The average IQ maybe goes from like 60 to 70 to closer to like 80 to 90 IQ when you're playing for $100 plus entries. And in those sort of formats, you wouldn't touch the South guys unless you're a complete dumbass. And maybe in case you had a thirsty Thursday and you went out there and you had a whole bunch of drinks and you had no idea what the hell you were doing, which is why guys like a Pendrith and Aubert, a Pendrith or Gerard, I should say, are going to be 30, even 35% owned in those sort of a formats. So just know that heading into it. Don't get surprised by that after lock. These sort of trends happen for almost all showdown slates, but I want to point them out here because I feel like some people that are newer to playing DFS, showdown especially, might not know that heading into it. Heading down to the next 10 in the ownership, I did cut it off down here at number 20. We've got some 7K guys that start to show up, and it's towards the top end, guys like a Michael Thorbjornsen that we see show up, a Brooks Koepka. Even despite him shooting +1, I expect a lot of people to play him, assuming that he's going to bounce back at the easier of the 2 courses. And I don't think that's necessarily a mistake, but he is going to be a little bit more popular than some of the other guys around him. Denny McCarthy, a Christian Bezuidenhout, who was also pretty high owned for main slate this week. He's only $7,300, and I've got him at about 10%. And you've got to realize at the bottom of the 7K range, you've got guys that are sub 1% at the bottom end of the 7K range. So a 10%er down there is 10 times the ownership of some of the other players around them. More conservatively, closer to 2 to 3x at the very least compared to some of the other guys around them. And down low, if you're already splurging at some of this chalk towards the top end of the board, and because the North course is so important, and the North course guys are getting that extra steam, I mean, this average ownership of like 25% there, 33% on a Cam Young is also pretty rare to have for a round 2 showdown slate. Because it's pretty unavoidable to take some of that chalk up there, it makes it really hard to want to play some of the 7K chalk, because you're already going to have those 20% plusers at the top end of the board, unless you're forcing in like an Aubert, somebody else that struggled in the 9K range at like sub 15% ownership. Then it's almost inconceivable to use somebody like a Seabez and let's say Thorbjornsen as your 2 7K range players, because you just don't have any spots to get the leverage that you need. So that's also something that you should be keeping in mind, is that as we go further down in the pricing, the ownership importance gets more and more. And that's because you have so many lower owned guys around these players as options that the opportunity cost of using a 9 to a 15%er is more than what it is up top. Because like even the low owned guys, this is again for large GPPs, ownership will spread out a little bit more in the single entry formats. But in large GPPs, you're quote unquote low owned guys like Gobert are still almost like 20% owned. So there is some leverage to be had. I know we had the question about that before, like, will people just jump ship on all of those guys that struggled at the South Course? Mostly, but not all of them is the answer to that question. So a few other notable names down here. Let's see, Hideki's, the one South Course guy that's really showing up there. But after a Seabez on here, I will say that there are a few other South Course guys that are showing up there too. Like Justin Rose, for example, is like 7 or 8% owned. But that's what you're going to see for some of the 9-10K players is like 5 to maybe 8 to 9% ownership, even if they played really well at the North Course today, because people have brains and they know to play the guys that are playing the much easier course. And, while I'd like to preach to you guys that there's going to be this massive edge, we'll put that in quotes, for round 2 Showdown, not really. You're still going to have to work for it. You're still going to have to go through, build a quality player pool, make the leverage decisions and make them work in your favor to go out there and take anything down. So I'm not the sort of tout that's going to feed you bullshit. There's a whole lot of that out there that you can find on other shows. I'm going to shoot it to you straight and give it to you as blunt as humanly possible. And for building a player pool, that's where a lot of my focus was over the last hour and a half or so. It's a very traditional slate. And although we only have the one golf course with the shots gained metrics, it's the one that matters. We have it at the harder South Course. All of those guys are going to be playing the easier North Course tomorrow. So we can look at some ball striking poppers, guys that play well off the tee on approach. That's the most consistent part of golf from round to round. So that's why we're looking at that. They've got short game regression candidates on there too. Guys that struggled around the green or with their putter, that were okay with their ball striking. If, they're okay with the ball striking again, and then they flip the short game, those could be guys that could really bounce back and do it in a hurry. So for example, like your Obears of the world, maybe candidates from that perspective. But you've also got high upside players, guys that are a little bit more aggressive, that can go low and shoot something like -7 or -8, especially at the easier golf course. They got course history, so guys that have played well at the Farmers over the years. Also, the U.S. Open at this course is something that I'm looking at for that too. And then also good POA putters. And that's the kind of surface that these guys are putting on. And especially because our player pool is only going to be the North Course, and it's a birdie fest on that side. Putting, while it's not as big of a factor at the South Course for 3 of the 4 other rounds, it wasn't towards the top end of our modeling or anything. In fact, just to show you this, it was at number 6 in the modeling and weighed 13.5%, which is really low for putting. Putting's normally close to 25-30% for most weeks on the PGA Tour. It matters at the North Course because conditions are so different. And the reason why it was weighted so lowly for my main slate this week is because it's only for 1 of the 4 rounds. So the other golf course, the one that's a lot more ball striking heavy, is the one that I was accounting for in that modeling a little bit more. So that's why we want to cater our process for the type of golf course that we're targeting. And these are the kind of player pool tags that I'm using in my exposure. And the reason why I point this out is to show you that I have a rhyme and reason for every single player that I'm getting to, and that it's not only just based on what we had from today. A lot of people, when they're trying to build their player pool or their lineups for round 2, will only look at the round 1 stats. And we kind of luck out this time because the stats are actually from the golf course that was harder and that they're not playing the next day. But imagine it was the other way around. Imagine the shots gained metrics we only had from the North Course, and then they were going to the harder South Course the next day. Then what would you do for your process? That's why it's important to not only have things like these top 2, where we're going to look at what guys did today, but also things like high upside players, course history, especially for long-standing events like this, is the absolute nuts for Showdown. I feel like not a lot of people look at it, and they should. They look at it for main slate, but they don't for this sort of a format. And then the good POA putters too. A lot of people aren't going into the weeds for Showdown like they are for main slate. Like I'll see all the time, this guy's a good POA putter. He gains 0.5 or a stroke per round on POA compared to his baseline. How come a lot of those same people aren't doing that for Showdown the very next day? All of that applies for main slate also applies for your Showdown process. So I do that to not only convey to my members the why on every single player that I'm getting to, but to get some of those trash, nasty plays that you just don't need to get to out of your lineups that you were using for no really good reason. And, I kind of caught myself doing that a few years ago. I had a player pool at times that was a little bit too large for what I needed. And when I would go through and actually build my lineups and whittle it down before I put it out there to all my members, I would realize that there were guys in there that I just said, oh, I'll throw them in there because they're low owned. You don't need that. There are plenty of low owned guys out of these different player pool tags that we have on there. there are enough guys, especially in this sort of a field, a full field event like we have here, where you don't need to just be randomizing and, literally picking names out of a hat to go out there and get to them. You should have some sort of a rhyme and reason. It'll clean you up, improve your process. And it's what a lot of people find valuable about my Patreon page. So if you guys want to download this sheet with all my projections, also that entire player pool included, make sure to check it out via the description of the video, like I was saying before. But now let's go through some shots gained metrics. And if you guys have any sort of players you guys want me to deep dive, now is the time for that. Any players that are actually going to be in play for our round 2 showdown process are all going to have the shots gained metrics to go through. So it's going to be a slate where we actually have that for once. Was not always the case at some of these multiple course setups. Round 3 is going to be a little bit wacky because half the guys that make the cut are going to be playing on a golf course that didn't have the shots gained metrics. But for round 2, we have no such problem. So anyone you're curious about, feel free to let me know. But we're going to go through ball striking poppers, the guys that hit the ball well today. That's your shots gained off the tee plus shots gained approach. That's the most consistent part of golf. So we're going to try and tail some of those players if we can. And then we're also going to look at the short game stats. That would be your around the green, also your putting towards the right here. These are a little bit more volatile. You're going to be a lot more up and down with these 2 categories. So we're going to look at it for better or worse. The guys that gained a whole bunch in those categories, a bit of a red flag. Whereas if they lost a whole bunch of strokes around the green and putting, but were half decent or even good with the off the tee and approach play, then those could be guys that we expect to bounce back in round 2 as well. So again, this is only part of the process for building your player pool. That's why we have things like the course history, the POA putters. And again, to go back to that spreadsheet, just to show you why the Patreon sheet is just the absolute nuts for your research, is it does give you the ownership, my player pool projections and stuff, but it's got the POA putting right on it. You can do all of that research for yourself for building your player pool right there. It's got the course history tab towards the bottom. It's got form on it. I mean, you name it. Really valuable. And again, I would highly recommend checking it out if you guys haven't already. Let's catch up on chat and then go through the shots gained metrics and then the prop and the betting side a little bit after that. Oh, on props, it got you. What, do you take him for a fade or something and he went under? That makes a little bit more sense than showdown. What happened to Rye? Didn't he withdraw pre-lock? He did. You didn't have him, but you didn't see anything on him either. Yeah, so I didn't play him myself, so I wasn't stung by that, but it would be kind of annoying if you did. There was no information on an injury or anything that I saw. So it was before lock. Frankie Sapin ended up going in for him, and that's just kind of the unfortunate reality of playing PGA DFS. Is it's going to happen to you a handful of times throughout the year. You just hope that it doesn't happen with your 9, 10K guys, because when it happens with those players and like 40% of your lineups are dead in the water, it's a really tough pill to swallow. And if you played Ride this week and you were somebody that's watching this that had that withdrawal happen to you, don't beat yourself up over it. It's going to help you out sometimes. Like, it helped me out a little bit this week, obviously, but it's going to work against you just as much. So if you got the bad end of the draw, just know that that's probably going to flip the other way at some point. And yeah, no information that I have on why he withdrew yet. Hey, Luke, you said Norton was dreadful with the putter, missed a few gimmies. Any hope for him to bounce back? Yeah, let's look at some of these deep dives here in a second, and I'll go back to that on a Norton whenever we get there. He said, thanks for another quality show. Hoping those steaks came out great. I would love to say that they did, Mike, but I screwed up my ingredient list. I didn't look to see if I had butter to do the basting before I went out there and cooked. And by the time I realized my mistake, I didn't cook right away. I put the steaks in the freezer for an hour and a half. Everything was closed. So I had to just sear it. They were severely undercooked and they tasted like shit, but it was still steak. And I made them into steak sandwiches. So, you know, it's first class problems, I guess, right? Me complaining that the steak wasn't up to my quality, like whatever, right? Get over it. Is what I should be saying to myself. You say, my advice was sound and you're always happy when you win your money back plus the rake. He said, you're always and have been solid, my friend. I appreciate that, Jones. And yeah, best of luck tomorrow. Hopefully it can be another at least break-even day for you. He said, do they change the pins for round 2? They don't. So it'll be the exact same setup. He said, Hodges is plus 105 against Meissner for a round matchup on the South Course. Do I have a lean there? That's a tough one for me. Both of those guys are playing excellent golf, Kim. I'm going to bring up the matchup tool on Bet the Number a little bit later so I can fully deep dive that for you. But at least my first reaction on that is that if it's plus 100 to each side of that, that would be almost a pure coin flip. Maybe the data will slightly favor Meissner. That's kind of what I think. But, I mean, Hodges has been really good, too. He said, I appreciate my humor. It's the best. I appreciate that. He said, I'll give you some lineups. Yeah, that's a no-go around here. Can we deep dive you? We absolutely can. You said Brennan was DQ. Ooh, yikes for the young gun, huh? The one that just earned his card. I wonder if he signed an incorrect card or something. He said use of non-permitted green reading materials. Yeah, he's a new guy in Tour, so you got to wonder if he did that when he won too and got away with it. Yikes, that's hopefully not for his sake. Let's go through these shots gained metrics. So first up here, we've got the shots gained ball striking, and the top 5 to top 10 here are players that I give a pretty sizable bump in their projection. Siwoo Kim, he gained 5.2 strokes on approach, did slightly lose off the tee, but that was enough for number 1 in shots gained ball striking. Our guy, Rasmus Niergaard Peterson, we talked him up as a value play this week, was somebody from the DP World Tour that I was really excited to get to. He not only played well, but he did it in a very sustainable fashion. He was about a neutral in the 2 short game categories and gained 3.5 strokes ball striking. So you got to like how he sets up heading to the easier of the 2 courses. Andrew Novak, a very similar type of stat profile where the ball striking was there and he was about a neutral in those 2 short game categories. This kind of stat profile is a 9 out of 10, not even, maybe even a 10 out of 10 stat profile with these 3 players, because this is about as consistent that you could see from day to day. Now, does that mean that they're going to go out there and 100% go low? Absolutely not. But compared to their peers, if you gave me the same ownership on these 3 players compared to the rest of the field, I would take them in a heartbeat over those sort of other players around them. And, I'm obviously talking about comparable talent level, comparable price tag and whatnot, but this sort of shots gained profile is as favorable as it possibly gets. Now, Siwoo Kim is going to get some extra steam because he's towards the top end of the board, people doing their due diligence on some of these shots gained metrics. He's probably going to be an extra 5 to 10% owned. In fact, you take a look at the ownership projections from before, he is about 30% owned in large field contests. Rasmus Niergaard Peterson also getting some extra steam because of that too, but not as much steam. Like he's not going to be 30% owned like a Siwoo Kim. He'll probably be closer to 10% owned in large field GPPs. And Andrew Novak will be closer to like 7 to 9% owned in your large field GPPs. These guys are a little bit more usable from the game theory standpoint than a Siwoo Kim, but up top, your low-owned guys are still like 19% owned with Aubert. So it's not the worst to play a Siwoo Kim either. It's just something that you do have to keep in mind, especially when you're playing in the large field GPPs, as we'll see with our lineup construction segment in a few minutes. But next up, we got Emiliano Grillo. Thorbjorn Olesen also gained over 3 strokes ball striking. And what you can see with these 2 that's a little bit different with the shots gained profile is that they lost significantly with the short game metrics. And I would say that these sort of players are like an 8 out of 10 shots gained profile. I would say that the around neutral with the short game categories is a little bit better because they don't have to flip it as much as some of these other players. But losing 2.5 strokes short game like a Grillo or losing 2.5 strokes putting with a Thorbjorn Olesen is really hard to believe that that's going to happen in back-to-back days. So, if they have a little bit of a bounce back there, they hit the ball close to as well as they did today, those could be players to keep an eye on as well, and are also guys that I'm giving a boost up. Again, maybe not as good of a profile as those top 3, but still pretty damn close to it. Johnny Kiefer and Aldrich Potgieter also hit the ball well. McGreevy, he hit the ball well too, but you can see over here, he gained almost 4 strokes in the short game categories. It's not a big enough red flag where McGreevy is unusable, especially now that he's on the easier of the 2 golf courses. But comparatively, he's a little bit higher owned than some of the other guys around him. And I'd rather take a shot on some of these players that were closer to a neutral in the short game and hope that maybe tomorrow's their day. They go out there and have that kind of nuclear performance. But Ryan Gerard hit the ball well. Tony Finau hit the ball well. But keep in mind that a lot of that was just on the 1 shot alone at hole number 16. So that's probably a little bit of fool's gold. Could be a short game regression candidate, though, losing the 1.5 strokes putting. But at Joel Damon, even your Harris Englishes, Jesper Svensson, your Dylan Woos down there at about like number 10 to 15 in the shots gained ball striking are guys that you give a 1 to maybe a 2-point boost in your projection. So that's something that I account for. It's what I use to actually help build my player pool as well. And not all of these players that we just mentioned are going to make it into my player pool. You still have the game theory that we have to incorporate. Also, you can't play everyone. As much as I'd like to play everyone, you can't do it and win money playing DFS. You've got to make some decisions. You've got to, take stands against and over the field. And a lot of these guys, though, I will say that of this list of like 15 players, that I'm playing over half of them in my lineups for tomorrow. So if they're on that list, there's a good chance that I'm using them, but there are a few that are unfortunately going to be left out. And now let's look at the short game. So I'm going to start with the guys that gained a whole bunch short game because it does not feel like this is something that's sustainable from day to day. So for example, Seamus Power, Sam Ryder that gained close, if not over 5 strokes putting. That is something that's going to happen like once a month for these players. And if it does happen to happen multiple times in the same event, then you're going to have a hard time getting beat by the rest of the field. So, a Seamus Power, if he's closer to a neutral tomorrow, it's not like he was terrible elsewhere. He still gained 1.8 strokes tee to green, but 1.8 strokes tee to green and then a neutral in the short game is nowhere near the kind of performance that he had for today. Guys like a Sam Ryder, Dan Brown as well, they were about a neutral at the ball striking stats. So it's not like they're unplayable, but it's a big enough of a red flag, in particular at the higher ownership numbers because of the kind of scores they posted, that I'm going to be off of most of these guys, not all of them in my lineups. Sam Ryder has got incredible course history at this event. He's you take a look at the guys that have been leading at this event over the last 10 years. I think he has like 3 rounds where he's been the leader. So that's another name to keep an eye on from that perspective. But unless they're somebody with like elite tier course history, then a lot of these guys are going to be left out of my exposure. And it's the same thing around the green. If you chipped in multiple times like some of these players did, then that's a bit of a red flag heading into the next day. Whereas if we go to the bottom end of this list, and we can find guys that were horrible short game, but that were okay with their ball striking, then these are players that we could see bouncing back in a hurry. So, for example, in Akshay Bhatia, he was about 0.43 shots gained into the negative with his off the tee and on approach. However, he was way worse with the putter. He lost about 4 strokes of the putter there. So if he's even a neutral there, normally Akshay, by the way, is a gainer off the tee and on approach. He's a really good ball striker. Poa, by the way, is one of the best Poa putters that we have in the world. So him losing the 4 strokes putting today was extremely unexpected from him. If he has any semblance of a pulse tomorrow, you'd expect him to have a 5 to even a 6 shot improvement. So that's the sort of player that I would use as a bounce back. And it's not indiscriminately. It's not like the losing the strokes putting is a good thing. It's not. It's that if they were at least respectable with the rest of their game, there's at least a chance that they bounce back. And unlike the ball striking poppers that in some cases, like a Siwoo, Mega Chalk for round number 2, these guys are mostly overlooked. Like an Akshay is going to be super, super low owned, even though he's on the right golf course. And Alex Noren, I know we had the comment about him before. He lost about 3 strokes putting, and then he actually gained with the ball striking stats. Marco Penjo, I bet outright this week. Really disappointing day with the putter, but was able to be about a neutral with the ball striking. These are guys that could go nuclear low, still make the cut at this point, and that could be really good plays from the showdown perspective, because not only do they have the kind of profile that to where it's not like inconceivable that they would have that kind of performance, but you're getting them at such low ownership numbers that the game theory edge is much higher than some of the other guys around them. So got a Max Homa, a Ludwig Aubert fits that kind of description, and Neil Shipley as well. A lot of those guys are going to see in my player pool too. And so you got a JJ Spawn, a Thorborn Olesen. I know we mentioned a little bit earlier some of the better plays that we have from the showdown format. So now that we've gone through it, we can go through some of the questions that we've got in chat. By the way, if you have any players that we weren't able to go through and that you still want us to deep dive, feel free to go ahead and let me know those in the chats. And let's catch up on some of those that we already had down there. And afterwards, we're going to build a lineup, and then we're going to go through the prop and the betting side of things. And that's where we're going to go through like prize picks, underdogs, some of the matchups on the sports books. So if you're waiting for that, it's probably another 15 minutes or so away until we get to that section. And hopefully by then we actually have a prize picks board to go through, because before I went live, we didn't have anything to go through there or on the underdog side either. But I think it's going to be like 2.5 hours since the round has ended by the time that we get there. We should have boards to go through by then. So if you're waiting for that, just a little bit longer, and let's catch up on those questions like I was saying. Let's see. To go back to your question, Michael, you were saying that the guys that played bad on the South Course could be guys to target. Totally agree. And I think a lot of them would be the short game regression candidates. It would be the best kind of way to go about that. Let's see. And yeah, some of the guys that went nuclear low with the putter, James, those were some of the guys that we might want to fade for round number 2. So hopefully that answers your question on that one as well. Let's see. Leverage Ludwig. So yeah, to kind of mention that one, he didn't have as much of like a shots gained regression profile, but losing, actually, yes, he did, right? He lost almost 5 strokes between those 2 categories. Even though he lost ball striking, normally he's a lot better than that. Normally he's an elite tier driver and a half decent approach player. Maybe was still a little bit sick and didn't get all his work in this week, and that's why he was a little bit rustier. The putter and the around the green play, though, is where we're very likely to see him bounce back from round to round. And if he does, it could be a 4 to even a 5 shot difference if he's even a neutral player.
it could be a 7 to an 8 shot difference if he has the kind of day that we're used to seeing from a Ludwig Gobert. So yeah, I think that he makes a lot of sense, at least in the large field stuff where you're trying to actively get different to the rest of the field. Kiefer or Potgater, if I had to choose between the two, it'd be Kiefer. If you're just asking for a breakdown of their games, we'll do that real quickly here as well. Kiefer gained ball striking and lost short game. So it's like a 8.5 out of 10 stat profile. So that's pretty hard to beat. Potgater's got a good course fit. He also nuked at the North course the last time he played it, I believe, even though he played terribly at the South course the last time he played it at the Farmers. But he gained off the tee, gained on approach, and then was a loser between the short game categories. Yeah, he's like a 7 out of 10 stat profile. So they're both above average plays. I believe both in my player pool as of right now. But I do prefer Kiefer just a little bit more. Let's see. Yeah, there's the Rye question. Yeah, let's go through the Norn stuff. So I showed some of the shots gained metrics on him, but it was mostly the short game that held him back. He's a way better putter than that. I mean, he's a top 30 putter on the PGA Tour, I would say, over a season. So losing nearly 3 strokes putting is only going to happen for him once an event, maybe once a month at most. So the neutral actually gaining with the ball striking elsewhere, yeah, I could get to him for a bounce back. So I'd say it's like a 6 out of 10 stat profile, better than average, because that short game's not too big of a red flag for me. Let's see. Still looking for some of these deep dives. Yeah, let's go through some Kevin Yu stuff. So Kevin Yu did not have his fastball today. I know that. I ended up at +2 at the harder course, which isn't great. And he also lost 1.2 strokes on approach. Here's the saving grace with Kevin Yu, though. He's a bit of loose cannon. He is a very inconsistent player. And he still posted birdies despite shooting the +2 round. And the birdie average at the South course, just to show you that, was only 3.42 per round. A little bit of prop talk, I guess, ahead of time right there. But he made how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 birdies on the round. The double bogey at 10 killed him. I mean, he had that bogey streak on the back 9, including a par 5 at 13, which is kind of inexcusable. But even though the shots gained metrics aren't necessarily showing it, him posting that kind of birdie production is at least somewhat optimistically to me. And did he start on 1 or 10? I wish we could figure that out here from Bet the Number. But if he did finish on the backside and then go birdie to finish, that's some pretty good momentum as well. And on top of that, he's got a couple good finishes at this event in the past. So I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10. The approach stats are an issue, but it's not that big of an issue. Rip Michael Brennan, the young kid getting withdrawn from the event. Could Thorbjorn, you said Thorbjorn double stack. Okay. Olesen and then Thorbjornsen, I guess, right, would be the other one. I know Olesen makes sense. He hit the ball decently, and he's a short game regression candidate. And then, yeah, if you're talking about the other Thor, the one that I bet this week, the shots gained metrics aren't great on him. But here's what I'll say. He makes a lot of birdies. He's from Stanford. He likes this type of grass. It's a good course fit. I'm still playing him for tomorrow. So no pushback for me on either of the Thors. And I would say, at least from like the analysis standpoint, the better play is Olesen, but I'm using both of them. Yeah, the non-permitted green reading materials is wild. That's it just means he used a green reading book. And I'm sure he wasn't trying to cheat. Like, he's just used to using it when he was on the PGA Tour Americas or whatnot. But like, I wonder how long that's been going on. Like, it's not like something you accidentally do for one day. So that's interesting to me. How about Potgater birdies and Ryan Gerard birdies? Harris English -5. Not sure what the Harris English -5 mark means, but yeah, Potgater birdies. He's somebody that's pretty aggressive. I'll have to see what his projection is, but 3.5 birdies for an elite tier birdie maker, I don't think sounds that terrible. The price pick board is up. That's good to know. Hoey, Penge, or Bhatia. So you're trying to choose between those three. I was going to say, I guess it depends on the ownership and the rest of your lineup, but all 3 of those guys should be low owned. All 3 of them kind of struggled today. They're all good course fits. They're all guys that I was on this week. So you're not gonna get too much complaints from me. Bhatia's the short game regression candidate. Penge even too. He has a similar kind of stat profile. Rico Hoey he had an illness last week. He withdrew, kind of sucked today. I would say one of the last 2 would be my preferred target there. But even Hoey, he's a high birdie or better percentage guy. I think he was like top 30 on the tour last year. I'm playing him tomorrow, even despite him looking like shit. So I like all 3 of them, but probably one of the last 2. Ludwig did birdie those last 2 holes, though. He was just heating up. Yeah, I could see him keeping that going. And I don't think he's sick anymore. Like, he would have withdrawn before the event. Like, that's what I would think with these guys. but he might not have practiced as much as he wanted to this week. And that could be why he started pretty shitty too. So maybe I'm just trying to rationalize using him as a play for tomorrow, but it makes enough sense for me to throw out there. Can we look at Xander? I for sure can. His stat profile didn't look too great, if I remember properly, but let's look at it. He lost in every category but on approach. Actually, he did gain putting too. So 2 of the 4. Yeah, this is a 4 out of 10 stat profile. I was even tempted to say a 5 out of 10 because we're not really learning that much about his game, because losing off the tee, gaining on approach, losing around the green, and then gaining with the putter. In fact, yeah, I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10 stat profile. It was just about field average. He ended up losing about 0.4 strokes to the field average. He's great at this course. He had some of the best form towards the end of last year. And this was his first start of the season. So perhaps that's why he was a little bit rusty. I'm expecting a bounce back from Xander, and especially now that he's at the easier of the 2 courses. Rogers versus Stevens. So you're looking at some matchup stuff. We'll do that a little bit later. You have to we'll look at the odds on that too, because that's really going to dictate that conversation. It should probably be pretty close odd-wise, I would imagine, on that. Do I think Can't Play makes the cut? Yeah, he's even par, right? He was at the harder of the 2 golf courses. I would say that he's got like a 80% chance to make the cut. Yeah, because he had a above average round at the harder of the 2 courses. Now gets to go to the track that's playing -3. And I think the cut line is probably going to be -2, -3 at the lowest. Actually, I was going to look at Data Golf to see what they think, but we're not going to bring up Data Golf on this live stream just because we are a Bet the Number channel here now. I'm assuming that Data Golf probably has -2, -3 as the favorite as well. If so, yeah, Cantlay's got a very good chance to make the cut. In fact, well higher than 50%, I would say. Sorry to ask again about you, perplexing. All good. I was going to get back to your question. I saw it there before. You were 1 leg away from 2 parlays. Me too, man. That's exactly what happened to me today. So, hey, we're due. If you had, mine were both 0.5 hooks. They weren't even just 1 leg away. They were 0.5 hooks for me. So I think I'm especially due for tomorrow. You said you started at 10. So yeah, he didn't finish on those 2 holes. Would have been nice to see that though, right? If he had finished the day off in style, but that was not the case. Thank you for the information though. That's great to know. Of course, do I find myself leaving a lot of salary on the table in Showdown? Great question, but the answer is no, not typically. The most I leave for rounds 2 and 3 is about 1,000. And that's in my large field GPP lineups. If I'm entering a set of 150, maybe $1,500, I'll be leaving on the table. But anything I'm building by hand, it's within $500 of the max 99.99% of the time. So I guess it depends on where I'm entering those lineups. You can leave salary on the table, especially if you find yourself taking some chalk. But because my strategy is to play more of the ownership game and to already get my differentiation there, I don't find myself needing to leave a lot of salary on the table. And my projections are always going to really favor the guys at the top, as they should. They're the best players in the field. So it's going to spit out a lot of lineups like that for me. So good question. I'm okay with it, but I definitely don't force it in, if that makes sense. What's going on? Antonio says, yo, welcome on in, buddy. He said, I don't know if we talked about it, but am I shocked by how easy the North Course played? You know, it's easy, but Rose had a 5-footer to go -11. Not at all. It's actually super easy historically. I don't know if you caught yesterday's live stream. We didn't see it live, so you might not have, but that's something that we actually called for yesterday. We knew it was going to play easy because of the lack of wind. And there's been years where it's played like -3.5. So not that surprising to me. I will say that like the amount of -8s or better was kind of surprising, because a -2.86 birdie average is low, but it's not like nuclear low. We've seen a lot lower so far this year over the first couple events, but we had a lot of guys that went nuclear low for round 1. So that was a bit surprising, especially because you got to remember only half the field was playing that golf course. So it was pretty impressive stuff. What are the odds that Aubert goes crazy and makes the cut? Now, that's a different question. Aubert rather than a Cantlay, right? Aubert's at +6. So what are the chances that he shoots -8 is, I think, the question that we have to ask ourselves. Well, if we take a look at the leaderboard, how many guys shot -8? 4 shot -8 or better, and they were all at the North Course. So that's 4 out of, how many players are in this field? 4 out of 148, something like that. So there's what, like 74 players in each wave? Yeah, your odds aren't looking too good, Bob. 4 over 74 is actually, I think, what we need to do. Let me give you an exact percentage chance. And we're going to have to increase it because he's a good player, right? So he's not going to have the same chance as everyone else, but it's a 5.4% outcome for the field. So Luddy, I mean, he's got some nuke rounds in him. He knows what he has to do. 7.5, 8% chance. And that's maybe being a little bit optimistic, but yeah, you're behind the 8 ball on that one for sure, man. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm going to shoot you straight. That's just how I roll on this channel. Thoughts on Thigala for round 2? You said it's nice seeing him at the top end of the leaderboard. Yeah, so I think he's playing the harder golf course, so you don't play him in Showdown. Just throwing that out there. But I know your question wasn't really based towards Showdown. In general, he's a really good course fit on this sort of a week. He kind of sprays it off the tee, but he's got the club head speed to compete at these major championships. He's also got the short game, which I think is an underrated component of the course fit for Torrey Pines. So yeah, I think he's a 7 out of 10 course fit, and that's really all we know heading into his round at the South course, though, is because we didn't have the shots gained metrics to look at from round 1. He did hit 89% of his greens, though, which I don't know the average for the North course. I was not able to calculate that without the shot link data, but I have to imagine that 89% was higher than the field average for round number 1. So a bit of a good sign there, I'd say. And the course fit is well above average. I think that's the main thing there with like a 7 out of 10. And can I see Aubert starting off like +1 and withdrawing? For sure. I don't think he's a bitch quitter. At least I haven't noticed that. The withdrawal last week, at least to my knowledge, was actually due to illness, in particular because he was in contention to make the cut and to play pretty well at that event. But could he withdraw after starting like +1, +2, especially if he's still feeling a little bit sick? Yeah, I wouldn't throw it past him. But he's not like a Hideki where that's like a legit worry of mine. It's just kind of like a back of your mind sort of thing. I wouldn't let it change your strategy, though. I guess that's the main takeaway, is that like it's not that big of a deal where I'd be changing what I'm doing or anything like that. Let's build a lineup here together, and then let's go through the prop and the betting side, because we do have that prize picks board to go through. And our main focus here is just making sure we're not duplicating ourselves a million different times and giving ourselves enough leverage to take down the kind of contest we're entering. And the reason why I say to take down the kind of contest that we're entering is because your strategy is going to morph depending on how many people that you're playing against. If you're only entering against, I mean, let's take it to the really extreme example. You're entering against 10 other entries. Do you think you have a really high chance of duplicating yourself against 10 other people? If you don't know, maybe you're one of the 40, 50 IQers I was talking about before. No, you have a next to 0% chance of duplicating against like 10 other entries. Let's go to the other extreme. Largest of large field GPPs that we have for tomorrow that have close to 10 to even 20,000 entries at times for this kind of round 2 showdown. Do you have a chance of duplicating those contests? Obviously, right? And your chance to duplicate is it's not infinitely higher, but it's orders of magnitude higher than what you have in the contests that have much less entries. So in those contests, getting differentiation, game theory, everything we've really been talking about during that live stream is at the forefront of your process. In fact, it's probably the most important part of your process for round 2 showdown, because of all that volatility. Knowing where the rest of the field is going and accounting for it is the best thing you can do to set yourself up for success. Whereas in single entries, that's not necessarily the case anymore, because they're not as top heavy. You have such a lower duplication chance. You really want to be taking some of your best quality plays that you have on the board. And that doesn't have to be the best median projecting plays that you have on the board, but the plays that when you look at the shots gained metrics, you look at course fit, you look at course history, maybe they're the best POA putter that you can find, or the highest birdie or better percentage guy that is low owned that you have for tomorrow. Then use those sort of plays in your single entry lineups. You don't have to think about the ownership as much. Not to say that the ownership doesn't matter, because we talked about it when we were going through the top end, where a lot of the chalk gets chalkier in single entries, and some of your plays that are a little bit overlooked go a little bit more overlooked. You can still get leverage, which is helpful in those sort of contests. It's just that you don't have to have that leverage unless you really want to have it in there. So that's the difference in strategy. But what we're going to do here is we're going to build a lineup for the largest of large field GPPs, because that's where it's more difficult. That's where your life becomes a little bit more interesting, right? You have to be thinking about balancing the high end, the low end guys. You still want high projecting lineups. That's why optimizers matter. That's why we only want guys that are playing the North course, not the South course. I mean, if we wanted all low end guys, and that's all we cared about, we would play the South course guys, right? But we know that's dumb, because they're playing the course that's over 3 strokes harder. So we still have to optimize on projection somewhat. It's just that we need to start thinking about 1 or 2 different spots to differentiate ourselves. So for example, up top, I'm still totally fine with using some of these guys that played well at the South course, as long as we're getting different elsewhere. So for example, Patrick Cantlay, still very usable. And you just double check it. He's playing the right course. I'm 99% sure of it, right? Yeah, he's playing the North course. I don't know why I second guessed that one. But let's throw him into that sort of a lineup. And then let's move on to the next one. He'll be about 20% owned, I believe, in my projections. But let's throw in a Siwoo Kim here. He's going to be one of the highest owned guys that we have in the 9K range. Some of those 8K range players, I could see getting some steam as well. That's the Gerards, the Pendriths that have a whole lot of the South Course guys that are priced around them. So let's go a Cantlay, a Sibu, and a Gerard. And this would be what I would classify as an extremely chalky start to a lineup where you've got all guys that are over 20%, even one that's close to 30% on a Sibu Kim. If you're entering this in the big 150 maxes against 10,000 plus entries, then you've only got 3 other spots here that realistically differentiate yourself. There's going to be a big portion of the field that is starting lineups with this exact set of 3 players because they all make sense. They're all playing the proper track. And Gerard, we saw the ball striking stats on him. They were excellent. A little bit of a short game regression candidate. Sibu Kim was number 1 in ball striking. Everyone loves playing Cantlay on the West Coast. It's just kind of like a prevailing narrative. He's also $10,100. So he's at the top end of the board. Those guys get played pretty much no matter what in the large field GPPs. We've got no one in here that's giving us differentiation. So we've got to complete that with our last 3 players alone, which is why, even though I love Thor Bjornsson, he's one of my favorite plays for this week and for round 2 showdown, it wouldn't really make sense to use him on top of 3 super chalky pieces here. Because if we did that, now we have 2 spots to get all of our differentiation because a Thor Bjornsson's like 10 to 15% out because he's towards the top end of the board, shot -4 at the harder course. And it was somebody that a lot of people, including myself, were on heading into this week. So now we're down to only 72.5 remaining, and we have to put in probably 2 sub-5%ers here to have any chance. It's just not really a situation that you want to be living in. So if you can avoid it, try and pivot off of guys like Thor Bjornsson if you're a little bit chalkier towards the top. And let's say that you just can't avoid him. We're actually going to do that here in this lineup. You say, you know what? I really like Thor. Like he's like my favorite play on the slate. It's not my favorite play, but we're just brainstorming and kind of spitballing right now. Let's say that he was your favorite play and you just had to use him. Then, you might have to get off of a Siwoo Kim up top, right? You've got to balance that ownership. You can't just have chalk across the board. And then maybe rather than going to a Siwoo, that's where you take a JJ Spawn instead, who kind of struggled today, who's still playing the easier of the 2 golf courses. And you can afford to take a Thor Bjornsson instead. So if you made that sort of decision, and then now you're down to about $7,200 remaining for your last 2, we still need our leverage. So that's where guys like a Thorbjorn Olsen come into play. Solid ball striking, could be a short game regression candidate. And you might want to even consider leaving salary on the table here. And I know we had the question about that. Like, do I leave salary on the table? My lineups don't usually look this chalky. Like I self-admittedly, Thor Bjornsson's likely not being used for me tomorrow unless I'm having at least 2 pivots towards the very top. But if you were going with this sort of lineup and you wanted to ensure that you're not going to duplicate yourself, well, a way to give you that extra little bit of cushion to make sure that you're going to do that is to leave $200 on the table and make sure that you get to some sort of an ownership pivot. So Jordan Smith, for example, he's a good ball striker, played the harder South course today, if memory serves me correctly. Maybe you would use him at $6,800 to round off that kind of a lineup. It gives you that sub 5%er on top of a sub 7%er on an Olsen. Those are your 2 leverage pieces. And then because you have him in there and a slightly lower owned JJ Spawn and the $200 left on the table, you're most likely not going to duplicate yourself if you went with that sort of a lineup, and you'd have enough leverage to get the job done as well. So it's not rocket science. It's not that difficult to navigate some of the chalk at the top, but maybe a little bit harder than usual, I'll throw out there, because the ownership is condensed because of the course situation, because of only wanting to play guys playing the easier North course. You're going to get higher ownership numbers than what we're typically used to seeing. So just something to keep in the back of your mind, incorporate it, and account for that with the rest of your lineup process. But that's all I've got for DFS. So best of luck from that side of things. I hope to see you guys towards the top end of the GPPs. I will remind you, if you guys want to get that spreadsheet from before, make sure to check out the Golf DFS tier on my Patreon page. That's where you guys can download this with all of my projections and all my player pool. And every single player I'm using, you guys can see in my 150 max exposure, but also all the rhyme and reasoning behind it as well. So highly recommend checking it out. Nobody goes harder on Showdown than what I do on my website. And it really speaks for itself. I mean, nobody's going into the detail that you're seeing on these live streams anywhere across the industry. Nobody has as detailed of modeling. Player pool stuff for Showdown is what I have. And nobody has the kind of results that you're going to find here on these live streams either. I mean, we had multiple people from round 1 kill it for Showdown already. Last week, we had like 4 or 5 takedowns from people in the live chat itself. And those were just the people that caught it live. We had DMs after the fact, people in the community and Discord that were sending me winning messages from last week. If you guys want to be a part of the winning team, and like I said, the sweatiest of all the sweaty tryhards in the community, then my Patreon page is the place to be for all of that. But that's it for DFS. We are going to go through the prop and the betting side now. So let me bring up these averages. We're going to go over a little bit of a weather report as well. It looks very similar though, so not a whole bunch to talk about there. And then we're going to look through these boards, which this will be a true first look for me. I have not seen anything on these courses yet. And hopefully there's some value to go out there and attack, but we're going to have prize picks. We're going to have the matchup bets to go over after that. So if you're here for any exposure detail for tomorrow, we'll be going over that for the next half an hour or so. But let's catch up on chat before we truly dive in there. Did I see that Brennan got just DQ'd? Yes, I did. We saw it just after we went live, but I would like to see what exactly happened on the course if they got video of it. He said, great stuff. Appreciate that. Appreciate you too, Hermits. And yeah, the DQ for breaching the rules is, I don't know. I've got to see more on that. I'm going to hold my opinion until I have all the information, because I want to call the guy like kind of like a cheater for winning that first event, for having that. But maybe there's an explanation that and get thrown out there. Maybe it wasn't him, it was his caddy, because I think you can get DQ'd if your caddy makes that kind of mistake and maybe had like a new caddy or something. Like it might not have been the kid's fault. Let's give him a little bit of grace there. But we're actually going to start with the weather before we look at the averages, because the weather talk's going to be super simple for our round two conditions. First off, the pins are the exact same. The pins are not moving from day to day. They're going to move them like 3 to 4 feet because they can't have the hole in the exact same spot. If you know anything about agronomy, they literally take the grass out of the hole and they put it back in at the end of the day so they can grow back into the rest of the green. So they have to put a new hole out there so that that section of the green isn't just going to be without grass for 2 days. It'll die if that's the case. But scoring wise, the pin locations are going to be identical to the first round. Like that 3 to 4 foot difference is not going to add up over 18 holes. So they've got that. Also, course conditions from the weather perspective, they're almost identical. You've got sub 10 miles an hour wind the entire day. And if there's any wind that kicks up, it's at the very end, just like we had for today as well. So these averages are going to be incredibly useful for round number 2. So that's why I wanted to go through the weather, because there's a lot of times where like we'll go through the averages and then I'll say, but the weather is this, right? And then we'll have to adjust it. It's the exact opposite, actually. Like this confirms what we had for round number 1, which is why when we go through these metrics, they're going to be so valuable for tomorrow. So let's start with the harder course at the top. Played about a half stroke over par, 72.48. Birdie or better average was 3.42 per round. We expected that. It was maybe slightly higher than what I thought it was going to be, closer to like 3.3 per round, maybe. It was closer to 3.42, but not too surprising, I would say. Bogey or worse average was 3.58 per round. That likely stays pretty consistent too. Fairway average was 7.75 per round. The fairways were maybe a little bit bouncier than what they have been over the last couple of years. That was the one surprising thing that we saw from today. And the green average at 11.21 per round was almost exactly what we called for on the live stream yesterday. So South course was pretty on brand. I wish it played harder from the birdie perspective. Then maybe we wouldn't have 0.5 hooked on the 2 unders at 3.5 that I took. It was obviously the under in Mackenzie Hughes that you guys saw from last night. And then a Tom Hoagie too at 3.5 birdies. He got me by 0.5. Both of those players, by the way, they either made their birdies with like 25 to 30 footers or by hitting darts to like 2 feet. It's just like, I don't know. Like, I guess that's the kind of players that those two are, but luck sacking and having it be a loss is just brutally annoying. It's frustrating as hell. But we're going to try and get back after them for tomorrow, obviously. And then at the bottom, you can see the North course, which is the easier of the two. And that played minus 2.86. So that's a 69.14. I thought it was going to play like -2 to -2.5. So it actually even played a little bit easier than what I was calling for. But I did mention that it had played the -3, -3.5. And I wanted to be a little bit more conservative about our projection. And that's normally what we do here, right? Like I'll sometimes tell you my true thoughts and then I'll kind of like give you the conservative one after the fact. The true thoughts are normally actually what I think is going to happen. And that's essentially what ended up happening at this North course. So birdie average was higher than we've seen over the last couple of years. It was 4.77 per round. And the bogey or worse average was 1.93 per round. And because it is so similar conditions wise and the exact same pin setup, if there's going to be any differences with these averages, maybe it gets slightly harder. The only reason I say that, by the way, is because the course could get a little bit firmer as the week goes on. And that's a massive maybe. but most likely it's going to be within 0.1 to 0.2 shots of a difference at either golf course. So now that we have a little bit of a baseline of what to expect, we could take a look at this Prize Picks and Underdog board and see if we can find some value. And I have not seen any projections yet, so this is truly going to be a first look sort of thing here. These guys that are at 69 at the North Course, that's essentially the field average, so it's good to know. These guys at 69.5, they're being asked to have an average day to cover, which feels right for Mackenzie Hughes, but a Seamus Power might be a look to go out there and do that. Only issue there is that he was so short game dependent today that is a little bit of a red flag on that one. These guys on the South Course, I should say, the harder of the two at like 71.5 strokes and 72 are also about the field average. Sam Stevens has to gain about a stroke to the field to go under. Patrick Rogers has to gain about 0.4 strokes to the field to push that sort of projection. Yeah, I'm mostly going to want to look at the North Course guys, at least based on what happened today. That's where I'll feel a little bit more confident about our leans. But we've got guys like a Cam Young at 68, so that's at a -4 round. That's about 1.2 strokes to today's average. Cantlay, if he gains about a stroke to today's average, he could cover that sort of a line. That's at least somewhat interesting, especially because he's such a good golfer. The fact that Cantlay is at the same projection as a Bhatia, it feels like one of those two has to be wrong, right? Like either Bhatia is too low or Cantlay is too high. There's no real in between on that. He's just a better player than Akshay at this stage. And I'm an Akshay lover. I bet him outright this week, and I'm even saying that. And I'm a Cantlay hater too. Cantlay, I can't stand how long he takes to golf, but he's a damn good golfer by the time he gets around to actually hitting the golf ball. But like Hideki to shoot -1 at the South Course, I don't love the idea of playing positive stance plays at that brutal golf course, but -1 is somewhat doable. Like especially for somebody that played well in round one, is in contention, is going to be trying to keep it together for the next day. So like, I don't want to eliminate positive stance plays from that golf course, but still, even then, it's kind of hard to stomach because it's a brutal golf course, one of the hardest that you have on the entire PGA Tour. Here's a Siwoo Kim. He's got to gain a stroke to cover that kind of line. To shoot someone like -4 and cover. I kind of want to look at DraftKings, and I'm going to see where they have some of these guys on there. There's Ludwig at that same sort of projection. Brooks Koepka's at 69. So he's got to gain 0.14 strokes to the field to push that sort of number. Aldrich, he's got to gain 0.14 strokes to the field to cover that sort of number. I mean, these feel pretty realistic. Like, it feels like we could take some of these guys for positive stance plays at the North Course and get away with it. But I do want to see where DraftKings has this priced. And I'm not by any means a plus EV better, so don't take this the wrong way, but I do somewhat respect what they have to say. Like, I don't completely ignore the odds. Sometimes I do, but in this case we won't. So Cantlay is juiced -124 under, so at least somewhat of a lean that way. Let's look at Aubert. So no Aubert odds. Who else was at that golf course? We could look at Spawn. Spawn's been a top 5 player in the world for the last couple months, so that's a pretty decent look. I'm going to look at Brooks Koepka too. So let's do Spawn first. Spawn's playing some excellent golf. He's about even money at 68.5. I don't agree with that. And this is why I probably shouldn't even look at the odds, because these lines makers are not very intelligent sometimes. Sometimes they're spot on, but more often than not, they get this stuff wrong. And I know they always say like they don't, get things wrong. That's why they build all the sports books out there in Vegas. They build all the sports books down in Vegas, not because they can set proper golf lines, because they have crappy parlay payouts, because they have predatory tactics to make people want to enter 4 to 5 leg parlays. They'll end up missing by 1 leg. That's the main edge that they have. I promise you it's not with these golf markets. They have not cracked that code. NFL markets might be a little different. Basketball, some of the bigger ones, they have some pretty good markets on, but yeah, definitely not on golf. There's a reason why I've had so much success on these prop betting markets the last 6 years. It's kind of speaks for itself result-wise. Okay, so that's the strokes board. It was good to go through that. Let's look at birdies are better. So remember, it was a 4.77 average, the North Course today, and that's probably where we want to go with positive stance plays. We could look to some fades at the South Course. That's the harder of the two, especially if we can find some guys at 3.5 that are kind of shitty. But it does look like most of the guys they have on here at 3.5 look like half decent golfers. And it looks like the guys they have at 4.5 at the North Course are pretty dog shit. So we're getting the exact opposite of what I wanted, right? We wanted some decent golfers at 4.5 or take for overs for the North Course. Seamus Power after getting 5 strokes putting, that's a hard no. Mackenzie Hughes was like number 171 on tour making birdies. I know he burned us today, but like he just got lucky. I guess I would definitely not be looking at that over. Whereas like these guys for birdies, like we want to fade the other course, right? The harder of the two. Patrick Rogers is on a heater. Sam Stevens was a top 50 player on tour last year. Vince Whaley is a hard guy to fade for birdies because he's got one of the hottest putters on tour. Alex Smalley is an extremely volatile birdie maker. Like I wouldn't want to fade him for birdies if it was up to me. Keith Mitchell was a top 25 birdie maker, a top 50 last year. He kind of fell off towards the very end. I don't really want to do it, but so I guess I'll give Prize Picks and their Alliance makers some respect here. They've got an okay board posted. I'm sure there'll be something. I already see a couple spots that we can attack for fades actually, but the top end of their board there, the part that they probably started with was actually pretty well put together. Like there's actually not a lot of obvious value towards that portion, but as we get closer towards the bottom, there's a few obvious spots that I definitely find myself wanting to take. And I'm not going to point them out because I've got a sneaking suspicion that the lines maker might be watching right now and might be trying to snipe some stuff off the board. But in this middle end here, I'll just say that it's on the screen now. There's, in my opinion, a very obvious fade that we could take at 3.5 birdies. But let's go through some of these other categories so we could try and find a pairing for it so that we can at least enter it ourselves before they take it off the board. So birdie or better matchups. I normally look for the unders when you see these 0.5s on it because the unders will win in a tie situation. And every once in a while, we'll find somebody that's the opponent with the extra 0.5. It's actually the better birdie maker, which makes them pretty good hit rate props if you can find them. But I don't see any obvious ones here so far. Let's see. Yeah, they seem pretty decent across the board. Like maybe you could argue that the SH Kim side would be a little bit better than a Justin Rose there. But Rose, after shooting -10, he's clearly in some pretty good form. That might not be the spot to attack that. Pars, call 1-800-GAMBLER if you're betting on pars. You have no soul if you're doing that sort of thing. I think I've bet like one par bet in my life, and I'll never do it again. It did not go well. I think it took the over on pars for like Siwoo Kim or some really a guy that makes a lot of pars, right? That just plays boring golf, and he made like 2 pars the entire day. So that's just not happening again. Like I said, 1-800-GAMBLER if you're betting pars. You've got all these other categories that you can bet. That one just doesn't make any sense. And then over here for fairways, the average was lower than it typically is. Again, to go back to that average, it was 7.75 per round. Typically, it's closer to 8.25 to 8.5 per round. So pretty different there compared to what we usually see. So like Grazerman's a below average driver. Same thing with Knapp. Like they would make sense towards the unders, but they have to hit 6 fairways to go under. And then there's only 14. So they've got to miss like 8 fairways just to go under that sort of line like that. That's a little bit too much of an ask, I would say. Yeah, not a whole lot of fade value, I would say, with this fairway board here. Like maybe even a Jason Day over you'd consider because he's been driving the ball off the tee pretty decently. But let's find a pairing for that under on birdies that I was looking at before. And I was tempted by some of these unders on strokes for the North Course. Scoring average close to the 69 number here makes that something that would make a whole lot of sense. And even though the sportsbook lines didn't really back it up, somebody like Cantlay shooting a -4 round feels like he should have a lot more juice than that -124 towards the under because he's somebody that on tour is averaging. I mean, we don't even have to guess, but he's averaging. Let's just go over here to this, actually, the matchup tool. This is at least my favorite way to find some of these averages rather quickly. We're going to go to the last 24 rounds, pick up Cantlay. He's averaging 0.89 shots gained to the field, and that's not even one of his better sample sizes. But if we zoom out a little bit more, it's actually about the same for that sample size. But you've got to realize that it's 0.88 shots gained per round with the best fields of golf, major championships, signature field events. He hardly ever plays in regular tour events like what we're having this week. So his nearly a shots gained baseline, which is already enough pretty much to shoot this -4 for us, is a lot more impressive because of the kind of fields that he does that in. So like, that's why I was looking at that Cantlay one before. So like maybe he could be that pairing that we take on that. It's kind of wild that they have guys like Akshay and a Gerard at that same projection. Like obviously one of the two is off. And I think that the Cantlay side's the one that seems a little bit more off than the others. At 69 though, I mean, look at Alex Norn. So I know he did not have his fastball today, mostly because of the short game. He lost about 3 strokes of the putter. But let's just go to his sample size over the last, I guess, 48 rounds of work on a Norn. but he's gaining 0.79 shots gained per round over that stretch. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to take that on the easier course. He's got to have a decently low round to make the cut. Did they take that off? Okay, they didn't. Okay, I do want to show you guys the person that I want to take for the under, though. It's a past winner here. That's the only downside to this bet, is that somebody who has found some success at this course. But look at his average from last year, and birdies are better. I actually don't know where he ranks. I know it's dog shit because he played terribly last year. Can't imagine he would rate out very well. But it's Matthew Pavone. Yeah, I was right. It was number 174 on tour in birdie or better percentage. There's Hughes, by the way. Still can't believe that from the day before. Still just makes me shake my head. But at 3.5 birdies, I mean, let's just compare some of the other guys. How the hell is Matthew Pavone at the same projection as Adam Scott? And I know Scott didn't have a great year in birdie or better percentage. Adam Scott also only plays the hard golf courses and the signature field events and whatnot. Let's make sure we're on the right year. Let's go back to 2025. But Adam Scott last year, even with that, was still number 110. I mean, realistically, he's much better than that because of the kind of courses that he's playing on. How the hell is he at the same projection as a Keegan Bradley? I mean, enough said here. Keegan Bradley, I know he's also only number 101. I thought I was going to be better than that, self-admittedly. But he also only plays the harder golf courses. Like, how the hell are these guys at the same projection? I mean, am I missing something? Let's make sure. Yeah, North course on Norn and the South course on a Matthew Pavone. All right, that'll be it. That'll be the two-leg community tail that we're taking for round number 2. So it's a 3x payout because we have the positive stance play and the negative stance play mixed in. $5 on this account, as this is the one that has been limited to absolute shit. If you guys have been here for a while, you'll know that I'm limited not only to $5 slips, but also to $20 entered per day. Luckily, there are ways around that. Not that I'm going to talk about here. I plead the fifth. That's all I'm going to say from that perspective. But yeah, I'll be entering this for full units after we get off the live stream here. And for the full 3x payout, some pretty solid value, I would say. And you notice we didn't even look at the lines on this because these lines makers, I could tell after some of the odds we're seeing for strokes that they just don't really know what the hell they're talking about sometimes. But let's see. Does Pavone have a line? Pavone doesn't have a line. But I would imagine if he did that, he might even be value towards the under. And Adam Scott, look at that, minus 138 towards the over, minus 140 towards the over on a Keegan. So, like, there could even be some value in the other direction if he wanted to go that way. But on lower tier players, I'm going to like the under when the average was 3.42 per round. Like, it's just common math. And it did not work out for me on the 2 props that I took for today, but I don't really care. Those were just some negative variants. Like Mackenzie Hughes making 4+ birdies. Tip of the cap to him. He did it in his first 9 holes too. That's the even more infuriating part. Tom Hoagie having 3 darts to 3 feet. Tip of the cap to you, man. You were one of the only guys today that was able to do that sort of thing. But I'm not going to let that dissuade me from what is obvious value, in my opinion. So we're going to take those 2 for the 3x payout. The rest of the prize picks and underdog stuff that I'm playing for tomorrow, you guys will be able to find that over on my Patreon page. Also, link in the description to go out there and check it out. Golf prop and betting tiers, how you guys get access to all this. And it's not only every single slip and all of the reasoning behind it as well. That will make you a better of golf, showing you what I'm looking for to find value on these boards. But I post all these conditions, give you guys averages for the PGA and the DP World Tour. I post weather reports for all of my members as well, so you have an idea of conditions so you can fully break down these boards, and of course all my exposure detail as well. And despite having a bit of a losing day today, again 2.5 hooks that kept us back from full cashes, which would have taken us from a losing day to a profitable one. That was a little bit hard to stomach. However, still up over 10 units on the year, and that's 10% of your bankroll in just a couple weeks. So a hot start to 2026, looking to keep it going over the next couple months. And let's catch up on any questions that we had for Underdog and Prize Picks. And then I want to take a look at the matchup boards. And Hard Rock Bet is not going to have their matchup boards up yet. So we're going to go through Draftkings. And obviously, if we can find similar odds in some of the other books, we'll be able to take them there. But I do want to catch up on any last-second questions that you guys have for props, though. So let's go through those. And then, yeah, if you guys have any matchups you guys want me to look through as well, we can do that just afterwards. Let me get a sip of water, and let's go through some of these. By the way, if you haven't already smashed that like button, go ahead and do so. Thought on Old Man Cooch. He's been playing better golf than most people would realize. That's my initial reaction. He said his over-under is 72.5, and you love the over. It is a bad course for him, though. So I mentioned that. It's the South course. He doesn't hit it long. He's also very crooked off the tee. That's a tough one, man. Because the first thing I say, my initial reaction is the only reason that makes that tough, because he's been playing better golf than I think most of us have realized. And I'll show it to you here and bet the number. So if we go to the tab over here, and we can use the last 24. We'll also use the last 48 on him. So last 48 rounds. It's crazy. When I saw this, it was mind-blowing to me. He's gaining half a stroke per round of the field. That's really good. That's not like okay. That's like elite stuff. And that's 48 rounds. That's a massive sample. And if you zoom into the last 24 rounds, he's averaging 0.79 shots gained per round. Now, the kicker is here. If we open this up on another tab, we can see where the shots gained are coming from. Is that rather than like the Cantlays of the world, some of your elite tier players that are doing it in the strongest fields, he's doing it in a lot of the shitty events rather than those strong fields. And he still does get into the occasional signature event. Like, I mean, you could see it down here at the Memorial. That was one of the stronger fields that you had of the year. But the rest of them are just regular tour events, if not weak tour events, where he's having those sort of results. So I'm actually going to call that one a coin flip, man. I don't know whether the over or the under's the play on that. I think that probably should be pretty close to even money. If you're looking at the over, though, like, I don't think it's a terrible bet. Like, the course fit is horrendous on Matt Kuchar. I can't think of a worse golf course on tour for his game. So if you want to say that, like, even though he's gaining strokes, you're going to fade him because it's not a good course fit, I'm okay with that. I don't know if I'm going to enter it myself, but I'm okay with it. You said, yeah, the breach of the rules. I still want to see exactly like when he did it before I say anything on that. But pretty bonehead stuff. What's going on? Matthew Studer, welcome on in. Pretty hyped to have you in the chat as well. Having a feeling that Xander can shoot -4 under. I think that's more likely than not rushing. He's playing the easy golf course, so -4 would be gaining just a little bit over a stroke to the field. What's his line? He's probably at 68 flat, right? Yeah, he's at 68 flat there. If he was 68.5, I would enter that in a millisecond. Like it would be entered before you could even see it on the screen. Like the screen delay wouldn't even pick it up. Hit the Higo under from my research, and then you put in a max bet on Christoph under 70.5 of the North Course. Good call on that, by the way. Mr. Wrighton, that's what you're talking about with that second bet. Really good course fit. He is going to have to play the harder golf course now, but I'm hoping that he can post something okay there because got a big number on him outright. If we can get to like -4 heading into the weekend, could be a pretty good sweat there. Thoughts on AJ Ewert? He played relatively well at the Amex last week and has already made it through the South Course today under par. Could maybe set up for a big day for him. Yeah, so let's look at the shots gained metrics because I think you even asked about him last week, right? If memory serves me correctly. I don't know enough about the kid to give like a full take on it, but I did mention that I want to see some of these shots gained metrics. I want to see how he's getting it done. Today, it was a very balanced effort. He did gain mostly with the putter, though that was his best category. I wish it would have been the approach play or the off the tee play, that he could have given us a little bit more. But let me look at last week, like as a whole. I know we didn't have the shots gained metrics the entire time. Yeah, he lost on approach. He also lost on approach at the Sony. Like, is he just getting on a heater with the putter? And is that why he's starting to pop off here? Because that was kind of it today. It's hard to say, especially because we don't have any other shots gained metrics to work with. So I think if you want to ride with him, here's the reality for Showdown is that no one's going to use him. He's going to be like sub 2% owned in all of your contests. And if you want to try and be early to somebody like a Ewert, I think that makes the most sense for Showdown. For main slate where you have to get over 4 rounds and you have to like survive, especially at a South Course that's so difficult that it could go a bit sideways in that format. But for 18 holes at an easier golf course, like, yeah, man, I think that makes a lot of sense. So a smart play, by the way. I kind of wish I had him now that I'm talking him up myself. Have I talked about Cam Young shoots -2 on the South Course and you feel like nobody's talking about him? Yeah, he's super high owned though. So I know you caught us a little bit after we did the DFS section, but look at the very top of the ownership. So I don't think he's going that overlooked. I do have him as the highest owned player on the slate, but I mean, it's deservingly so. I mean, he's playing some great golf. Obviously had that breakthrough win, fantastic Ryder Cup. It's good course fit, playing the easier of the 2 tracks. Yeah, I think there's a reason that he's 33% owned, and I think you're spot on about it. If people are overlooking at Cam Young, it's to their own detriment. Am I going exclusively North Course guys on DK? Easiest way to get duped, but it's the most optimal path for sure. I think if you're playing any South Course guys, I was going to say something rude. I was going to call them the 40 to 50 IQers again, but that's exactly what you'd be. If you're playing anyone from the golf course that's playing 3 strokes harder, send me all the head-to-heads that you'd like for tomorrow, is what I'll say. But yeah, I'm going exclusively North Course, guys. We mentioned the ownership a bit earlier, so you might want to check that out for some extra thoughts on this. It does condense the ownership in the 9 to 10K range, but if you're intentional about your differentiation in the 6s and the 7s, it doesn't matter as much. You're going to have enough room to squeeze in some guys that are lower owned, that are that sub 7%. And you can leave salary on the table as well. That's something that I think a lot of people kind of forget about when they're using some chalk, is even if you have like 4 really, really chalky guys on a lineup, it's usually what I do for round 4 showdown is I just leave like $700 to $1,000 on the table. That way, even if I have a little bit of a higher product ownership, my duplication chance is going to be infinitesimally lower than what it would have been if I used all of my salary. So good question. Yes, all North Course guys. And yes, you do have to navigate the ownership a little bit more. You said you're late, but am I going Aubert tomorrow? I am in a few GPP lineups, but he's not my favorite play. I would say up top, the ownership is a little bit closer than it should be. Like Aubert is still getting some ownership, at least in my projected ownership. So we'll see how it actually shakes out tomorrow. But I still think a decent amount of people are going to use him in the GPPs. But yeah, he's in a few lineups for me. He said, but will be a fade for you. He's the perfect candidate to withdraw. Yeah, he could withdraw, but here's the counter argument I'll give you, a retail ripper. Okay. And this is how I think, and I'm a psychopath when it comes to playing DFS. If he's +1 or +2 through a couple holes and withdraws, were you going to win the GPP anyways? The answer is no, right? If somebody starts off dog shit, their optimal percentage when it's all said and done on a slate like this, especially an easy golf course where bogey-free rounds are going to be plentiful, is quite literally 0%. So if you're in like a single entry, those sort of contests, totally understand the full fade. That makes enough sense to me. And in fact, in my exposure, I'm not using that sort of play in single entry. It doesn't make sense to be getting way too cute. But large field GPPs, where you have to have the absolute nuts, I mean, that's why when people tell me like, oh, you got this hurt golfer before lock, I'll almost always use them, because to me, it's pretty black and white in the large field GPPs. They're either the optimal play or they're not. Right? I don't really care about the top 100 finish in the GPP. Like, sure, it helps boost your bankroll up a little bit and you help either win back some of your money or even slightly into the positive, but that's not going to really change your year's ROI. Large field GPPs, you win and lose your year based on first place payouts. And Aubert, if he's got to make the cut, he's got to shoot -8. He's going to be also the lowest owned of the bunch up top. That kind of upside to me is something I just can't pass up. So again, I've got an extremely high risk tolerance. I am totally fine. Stinker. If he were to withdraw after lock, even before he plays, I can stomach that just because I play for the long run. But yeah, single entries, other contests, I could see how you could say that. But I don't know, man, there's the high upside volatile plays like that. When they work out, man, they can just, they can make or break your slate. They can take you from having an average day to taking everything down. He said, you're often, but it seems like everyone's on him. I wouldn't say that everyone's on him, man. He's like 18% owned in GPPs. In fact, compared to everyone else up top, he's the lowest owned of the bunch. So if your concern's ownership, man, then you should have zero concerns from that perspective. He's the lowest owned player that's over $9,500. So I would not agree with you on that. So how about Hoagie for the over 4.5 birdies? So I couldn't get behind that. He was like number 150 on tour last year in birdie or better percentage. I do know the average was 4.5. But if you take a look at this board, there are guys that are just better birdie makers. They can get at 4.5. Guys that are just better players. Like I know Seabez might rank in that same sort of range in birdie or better percentage, but Seabez is playing much better golf. And he also played in some of the stronger fields last year. Whereas Tom Hoagie was not playing in signature field events because of how poorly he was playing. So yeah, I might try and line shop some better players if I were you at that 4.5 mark. Like Griot kind of stands out. Like Griot's a half decent birdie maker. But like, I understand what you're doing with that 4.5 though, right? The average was over 4.5. You're only asking him to gain a quarter birdie to the field. That's not too crazy. The Tom Kim over 4.5, I'd stay away from too. He was also rather poor with the form and not very good at birdie or better percentage. Do I like the under at 3.5 birdies on Keegan? It's -112 on both sides. I don't. The play on Pavon was very specific to a player that's struggling, and that was bottom 6 on tour in the category last year. So in fact, I might even look at somebody like Keegan for the over or somebody like Adam Scott for the over. And you're saying that on Fanduel, right? Because Antonio, you're a big Fanduel guy. Something I've noticed this year, and it's only been a couple weeks, so I don't think we can say that this is an established trend yet. Fanduel and Draftkings used to always post the same odds. And by the same odds, I mean within reason. They were off by like 5 100ths or 10 100ths on almost every line that they were posting. It's no longer the case anymore. And for example, a Keegan line, right? You're saying is even money on both sides. He was minus 140 towards the over in DraftKings. So I just want to bring that up myself so I can show you guys. And yeah, he's even money at 3.5. So imagine the comparison now. Like, we're not going to have a Pavon line to look at, right? If Keegan Bradley, who's a top 50 birdie maker, a top 20 player of this field, is even money at 3.5, how the hell is Pavon, who's number 174, let me remind you, in birdie or better percentage? I mean, look at this. Got to scroll the whole way down to almost dead last to find Matthew Pavon on there. How are they at the same projection at that sort of number? So I would rather line shop some of these shitty players like a Pavon for that kind of an under. Even money, I think the over on Keegan Bradley might actually be the play on that one. It said, is going under on 71.5 strokes per day or nap crazy? It's not crazy. You're asking them to gain a stroke and a half to the field to cover those kind of lines. I would say on Knapp, that's asking a bit much for me. Jake Knapp, I mean, let's just take a look at his baseline. And he plays in like all the events. So it's not like we can exclusively say that he only plays in like majors or the big time events. He's kind of got a pretty average profile going on here. So what's his baseline been over the last, let's go 48 rounds, because he didn't play a whole lot during the fall swing. His baseline's about 0.67 shots gained per round. Needing 1.5 shots gained to cover it is too steep for me. I'd probably rather be on the over side of that. And with Jason Day, he's got a little bit of a better profile going on, so we'll take a look at that one too. He's closer to what, like 0.85 shots gained per round. The thing is with Day, he does play a harder schedule than Knapp. So he's playing in all the majors, all the signature events, and not as many regular field events like you have with a Jake Knapp. So yeah, I'd rather have a Day for that one than a Knapp. And the other thing to add on top of that too is Knapp's got okay course history, but Jason Day has elite level course history. He's played here a bunch and also has a lot of top finishes. Hey, Luke, thoughts on Haltong today and tomorrow? He has 0 bogeys, but only 3 birdies. He's your one and done pick. Well, let's take a look at where he played. If it was at the North course, then you might have some concern there because he's playing the harder course if that's the case. But let me double check before I start giving you anything. So he played, I guess it's not going to show it to me on there, huh? I'll do it on my spreadsheet on the other tab. Okay, I guess not. 1 second here, guys. I've got to open it up, the one that's uncensored, because Haltong wasn't in the top 20 of the ownership, so he was blacked out on the spreadsheet that I was looking at. My computer loves to run slow when I'm streaming. I guess it's because there's some of the computing power is towards the actual stream itself. But I have an expensive computer. I really wish it would operate a little bit better. So he's playing the harder golf course tomorrow. So he shot that -3 at the North course. I mean, you're in an okay spot. He's got to shoot even par or better. So he's got to have about a field average day to make the cut. But it's not like you've got like a 70 or an 80% made cut rate. Like, he's got to have an okay day to make the cut for you. I like Haltong Lee this week. He's somebody that I bet outright at 100-1. I would say that just from the one and done strategy standpoint to go to that, it might have been a little bit of an aggressive take to use Haltong Lee at the Farmers, but I like it. If it pays off, you're going to be one of the only people that has them in there. So I hope it works out for you because I've got a lot of exposure there myself. Cooch, Day, and Kanaya are using the new Velo Surge ball. So is Goddard, hint, hint, wink, wink. Okay, it's good to know. I have no idea what that Velo Surge ball is. I didn't go to the PGA show this year and I didn't look at anything. So I'm sure it's one of the new products that was put out there. And he said, thoughts on Taylor Moore? Played great today, but he's heading to the South course. So players like that are completely out of my player pool. Yeah, there's no way I'm using them for tomorrow. It's playing at a golf course that's just way harder, 3 shots harder. And I guess just to go back to that, because we did have another question from the chat on that too. I mean this literally. This, I guess, to kind of like hammer home the point. If you're playing any guys on the South course, send me head-to-heads for whatever amount of money that you want to play. Like, it is quite literally the dumbest thing that you could possibly do. Like, there's just no reason to play a golf course that's 3.34 shots harder. Like, it's just, in no circumstances, that's something that you should be doing. So, yeah, even if they played well, even if they had like some of their best metrics and the shots gained metrics are really hard to overlook, not one player like that's in my pool. But I will look at Taylor Moore's shots gained metrics because you are at least tempting with it. And yeah, he was at the easier course. So I guess no shots gained metrics. I don't know what I was thinking there. He only hit 35% of his fairways, but hit a bunch of greens regulation. This just kind of looks like he gained a whole bunch of putting to me. So yeah, no Taylor Moore for me at the harder golf course. He's a good GPP play though. He made a whole lot of sense this week for the large field contest, But round 2, not the place to use him, in my opinion. Is it how do I feel about Max Homa for the bounce back? I'm really hoping he bounces back because I also took him for an outright this week. Easier golf course is going to give him a much better chance to do so. And I don't think we mentioned this with the short game regression earlier, but he's one of the players that could really benefit from that. He gained ball striking about a stroke between those two categories, but lost about 3.5 with the short game categories. This is a 6.5, a 7 out of 10 stat profile. So I'd give him a much better chance than most to accomplish that sort of thing. And to make the cut, he's got to shoot -5, -6. So that's gaining 2 to 3 strokes to the field average. I mean, it's not going to be given to him or anything. He's going to have to grind it out and have a better than average day to do it. But that's well within his range of outcomes. So I'll be rooting for him to get that job done. But the stat profile looks pretty good for DFS purposes. Am I one of the people who was happy to see Brooks back? Okay, I'll give my take on Brooks because no, not really. I think that them letting back selective players is the dumbest thing I've ever seen from the PGA Tour. I'm somebody that watches live in PGA, so I'm about as unbiased on this as humanly possible. I'm one of the rare human beings, I don't know why this is the case, that just likes watching golf. So I watch both leagues, and I'm not somebody that plays into the politics of either side. But if you're somebody that's the CEO of the PGA Tour and you're letting certain guys back and then not others, it just seems pretty fucked up. And there's a couple players in mind, at least to me, that really are getting shafted here. Like a Terrell Hatton, everyone loves seeing him play. Don't get to see him play anymore now. Guys like Joaquin Niemann, he's arguably a top 5 player in the world. I think a lot of people would like to see him on the PGA Tour. There's no avenue for him to come back. And I could keep going. There are a lot of guys on the LIV Tour that are actually better now than when they left. Most notably, your Herberts of the world. Even a Patrick Reed, who's coming back now. But he wasn't included in that memo of being allowed to come back, and now he is. Like, what the hell is going on with this whole sort of situation? Like, now why are the roles being bent for Reed but not for others? Is it because he won on the DP World Tour and we want to ride the coattails of that momentum that he just generated? It just all seems very shady to me, and I disagree with that aspect to it. I think if you're letting one player back, it should be an open invitation to the guys that, maybe not everyone, but the guys that had their tour card. Like, you don't just say, hey, if you're on LIV Golf, you can play on the PGA Tour. But if you're a past PGA Tour member, especially like a past winner, then maybe some conditional status, like getting into a few events, would make some sense. That is what I hope happens. I hope they open it up. They let everyone come back and play, because I think that's what we all want as golf fans. We want to see all the best players playing in the fields, like the Farmers. I mean, think about if we had Joaquin Niemann answers, like all those kind of guys in the field, like an extra 20 LIV guys that were in the top 50 of the odds this week, that'd be sick. Like, that'd be awesome. I know if they just like snapped their fingers and said next week, all these LIV guys would play, golf would be so much better than what it is right now. And they had an opportunity to do that. And instead, they're doing what's best for them financially. So, and they're excluding guys like Phil Mickelson, by the way, who their cutoff for the major championship win for getting into LIV Golf was like a month and a half after Phil Mickelson won his major. So like that's what rubs me the wrong way, is that they're playing politics. They're not letting certain guys back and letting others back. And I hate that. I just want to watch the best players play. I love golf. I don't give a fuck about all that off the field shit. About the narratives and, the news and the people trying to cause uproar over things that don't really matter. I don't know. I think it's a terrible spot that our sport's in. But yeah, I wanted to go over this at some point. I am glad to be able to at least see Brooks play more. We're going to get to see him on like feature group coverage a lot and whatnot. But to get back to him in particular, he sucked on the LIV Tour before he left. Like, it's not even like he was good on the LIV Tour this year. So the PGA, like, taking him and then not some of these other guys is just like stupid. Like, he wasn't even a top 10 player on the LIV Tour this last year. I know he had a major win a couple years ago. I love Brooks. I'm not talking shit about him. Like, don't get me wrong. He's still one of my top 5 players in the world. I'm glad to get to see him play more. But like, you're letting him back and you're not letting back Joaquin Niemann and these other guys. That is absolute fucking horseshit. And excuse my language, excuse my French, but it's true. It's absolute fucking horseshit. So that's my opinion on the situation. And I think it's a good step though. Like, they start letting back guys like Reed, and they should probably be letting back a lot more people, because he pissed off a lot of the PGA Tour heads. So if they're letting him back, there's probably going to be some room for some other guys too. So I'm looking forward to that. Of course, I got you, Mr. Matt. Sure. Also, letting Pat Reed wait to come back until August is disrespected. I like seeing all these guys back. And yeah, you can't wait to click Reed. Yeah, he'll be good in DFS at these kind of events. The grinded out ones. not the Birdie Fest, but I'll be playing him this kind of a week. He said, I can't blame the PJ Tour for not winning Phil back. Yeah, like I get it, man. But think about how stupid it is to set up a rule just to exclude somebody like that because you don't want them back. It's just unfair, right? Like, here's the thing, Kim. The whole like animosity towards certain players is fucking horseshit. Like, I guess you said you can't blame the PJ Tour for not winning him back. I can blame the PJ Tour for not winning him back. He's done more for the PJ Tour brand in his career than everyone not named Tiger Woods. Literally, and that's not an exaggeration. There is no other players other than, and the reason I say that is he's not the second best player of all time. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying contribution to how big golf is today, the money in it, and the amount of eyes on the sport. Phil Mickelson is the second most influential player in golf history. Who cares? I shouldn't say who cares. That's how I look at it, okay? I say who cares if he decided to take some money and start up a rival league, because I like watching golf and I like watching all these guys play. But that's the way I look at it, man. I don't think that you should have all these, grudges against players and all of that, because I just want to see them all playing together. So I can blame them for not wanting them back, and I hope they change their mind at some point. But that's all I've got, guys. I do want to look at this DraftKings board actually and look at some of these matchups, but that's all I've got for the prize picks and the underdog side. But in terms of value for matchups, I almost got too out of hand on the rant there and ended the stream, but let's make sure we go through the matchup board on here as well. Apologies that may have taken a few extra minutes, but it's true. And I think it's something that could really improve golf as a whole, is if they could finally let everyone just play together and let us all have the best fields in golf back. But back to the scheduled programming here. So taking a look at these three balls, that's going to be what DraftKings has for offer. Hard Rock will post these a little bit later on. I normally look for the big long shots. You're not going to see me betting like a Sam Stevens at minus 115, unless it's like obvious value against two guys that are handicapped as the other two players. That maybe I'll use a Sam Stevens. But vast majority of the time, I'm looking for guys that shouldn't be the second or the third favorite, that are in that sort of a spot. And these top few matchups, nobody really stands out as an obvious play. I would say that Luke List would be a little intriguing there, as he is a past champion at this golf course, and plus 260 is a rather large number to hang on a player. But Luke List, at least if my memory serves me correctly, was horseshit today, right? He was like one of the worst players in the field. Let's see. Yeah, he shot even par at the easier North course. If you had any semblance of a pulse, I would probably consider firing on that. But let's keep going through these and see if we can find anyone closer to that plus 200 that makes sense. So far, nobody is really worthy of my hard-earned money at this point, but let's keep going through these as we have a lot of matchups and a lot of groupings that are potential options. Let's say a Valimaki plus 205 is somewhat intriguing. I know Horschel's no pushover, but Horschel's returning from injury and he hasn't been quite to his standards after returning. Davis Thompson too. I mean, he hasn't been that great either. And then you got Valimaki, who's playing world class. What we're going to do here actually is let's go to the last 24 rounds. And I think that's been great. This is a change that they made over here and Bet the Number, is that you can custom search these groupings to the left. And, if I just click on Valimaki, Thompson, and Horschel, we don't have to click in all three names anymore. And this is something that I asked for in the offseason because I'm lazy and I don't feel like clicking in a million different names to go through three ball odds. So I asked them, I was like, please, will you just make it so we can click the groupings and make our lives so much easier? And that's exactly what they did here. And this is exactly what I was hoping to see on here. Valimaki, over the last 24 round sample, is the best player out of these three. Now, if we zoom in even more, it gets even bigger. Valimaki will be a massive, massive favorite over the last 12 round sample size. That's where he won and then had another top 10 finish. Last 48 rounds, it's going to flip the other way, though. That's where he's actually going to be the worst player out of the three. But it's not like he trails by that much. He's at a quarter of a stroke per round as opposed to about a third of a stroke per round for Davis. And then Horschel, while he was really good before he left from injury, this half a stroke gained per round baseline was from like a year ago. So that's why at that plus 205, it's at least something we're going to throw into the shopping cart, because you could argue that he should be the second favorite in that group ahead of a Horschel. And I could also argue that a Davis Thompson shouldn't be close to plus 140. So maybe that Valimaki is the best way to attack that. Akshay is a good bounce back candidate, but a Cam Young, a Cantlay group is just a murderer's row there. So that's probably a stay away for me. I do think that Rose is a good course fit, but Hideki, Jason Day are also really good course fits. So that's another murderer's row group. Andrew Novak had some of the best shots gained metrics today out of anyone, but the plus 210 is not enough against a really good group like Gerard and McCarty. So that's also going to be a stay away for me. And I do prefer the head-to-heads a bit more. So that's something that Hard Rock does post as well, are just head-to-heads without the tie market, that I really like betting on these. But I do like going through some of these free balls as well, as every once in a while you'll find something that's pretty mispriced. Nothing too crazy so far, though. I guess you could say the Pavon at plus 200 might be worth an extra look or two, but his form has been really trash, and I would rather trust somebody that's playing well than somebody that just has the one good start at this golf course on the past. Cootie versus Ventura and Ford. Ford's been playing really well, so kind of surprising that he would be plus 205. In fact, I'm going to take a look at that one because I'm going to look at like the longer sample on this too. So let's start with that. The longer sample, Ford sucks because Ford had a lot of really bad starts when he first got out here. But we're going to take it to the other extreme. We're going to go 12 rounds. And he's actually still number 2. So, okay. I guess I understand why the odds are what they are. But he's been a lot better over the last 12 and last 24 rounds than what you saw over that last 48 round sample size. So that's why I thought there could have been maybe a little bit of value on that one. Keep going through these. Raspus is minus money. That's crazy. I would never bet that in a million years. Even if he wins, that's a stupid bet. If you bet him at minus money, if you do, call the 1-800-GAMBLER number. That's just you're donating money to the books if you're betting that sort of stuff consistently. Especially if you're doing it in parlay format. If you are, then you probably should have called the 1-800 number a while ago, if that's the case. Let's see. We got Siwoo Kim, Eric Cole, Max McGreevy. McGreevy with the round of the day, and I guess the odds are inflated on those two because of how well Siwoo Kim played. But yeah, I don't know if I can pull the trigger, but that's plus 120 on a 3-ball is like Scotty Scheffler level stuff. I'm not sure if Siwoo Kim has necessarily earned that distinction. Got Ludwig versus Brooks and Homa. You know what? This one is actually my favorite one we've seen so far. Because if Aubert, I mean, I am still playing him for a little bit of a bounce back in DFS. But if he's still sick, if that's why he was rusty, and now that he's plus 6, if he has motivation concerns, if you're telling me it's mostly kind of just like Homa and Koepka going at it, and you're getting plus 200 on both of them, I mean, we just got done talking about Brooks and about how he was just kind of like average on the Live Tour. Max Homa's starting to come into his Homa bed, and he has won at this golf course before. So I'd say if you can get this plus 205 or better, that one's like a for sure bet. I don't know if that's going to be the case with this Valimaki one. We'll go back to it and then evaluate it then. I guess it depends on what else we can or cannot find as we go through these. But that Homa one, at least if we can get comparable odds, is something that I'd be comfortable touting on this live stream. And so we got Pendrith versus you and Potgeider. Potgeider's too much of a loose cannon to consider taking at that sort of number. If anything, it would be a Kevin Yu. But Kevin Yu did really struggle today, so I understand why they have the odds where they do. Plus 370 on a Shank is... What did Shank do today? Was he that bad? Like, plus 370 on somebody that won in the fall swing. And no, he shot -3. It was about field average at the North Course. I'm not going to bet that one because he's plus 370 for a reason. He's got that low implied hit rate, but he shouldn't be at plus 370. Probably closer to plus 300. It'd be a little bit more appropriate on that. Out of principle, I should probably play it, but I don't know if I can. Adam Shank is as average as they come on the PGA Tour. And hey, being an average PGA Tour player pays, especially when you win once every like 3 years or something like that. I got a Vegas versus a Mound, Cam Davis. Davis in like the worst run of form ever. So I don't know if I can do that. Harris English, last year's champ versus Xander and Spawn. The issue is that that's a death row of a group there. 3 guys that could legitimately win this event going at it head to head to head. That's a stay away, even though Crystal Lamprecht is a name to keep an eye on. Long bomber off the tee, very similar skill set to an Aldrich Potgeider. I need a lot more than plus 190, though, to play him, as he's extremely inconsistent. Who else do we have on here? Fishburne plus 220. Yeah, I'm not going to play that. I like Haltong and Ricky. Both of them are really good ball strikers. Love Rasmus Niergaard Peterson, but not as a massive favorite against those other two. So you know what? The one that we're going to take as like the community tail is this plus 205 on Max Homa. And What I'll say about the Valimaki one from before is if you could get like plus 210 to plus 215, so maybe slightly better odds than what you're getting there on DraftKings, is probably the point where I'm playing that one for a full unit. But as of now, it's kind of like 50-50 on whether I'm going to end up adding that one to the portfolio. If I do, that'll probably be a half a unit bet for that Valimaki if I'm getting that plus 205. But if I'm getting plus 205 on Max Homa, I'll take this for a full unit 3-ball bet, which I don't normally do. But I just think this is a situation where Homa, in terms of hit rate, could be hand in hand with Logan Aubert. Like they could be, maybe Aubert is slightly favored over Max Homa, even with the modeling being a little bit disadvantageous on Aubert so far. But the odds aren't anywhere close to that, right? You've got Aubert as the clear favorite out of those three, other than Homa as one of the two guys that are lagging behind at plus 200 or more. I'll snag that because of that. So for the rest of the betting exposure I'm taking, you guys can find that on the Patreon page, golf prop and betting tiers, how you guys get access to everything I'm entering, as I was saying there before. Did want to go through the betting board just in case you had any bets and any community details that we could find with that Max Homa one there. I apologize for the little bit of a rant that we had in between, but some of you may have enjoyed that as well. But that's all we've got for the round 2 live stream. Best of luck with everything that you guys are going with. Patreon page is where you guys can find all the other content that I'm posting. Rounds 3 and 4 will be doing a similar live stream to what we did here, going over Showdown for Saturday and Sunday, and also props and betting for the next couple of days as well. So if you haven't already smashed that like button, go ahead and do so. Also go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come, including those couple live streams and all the content throughout the rest of the season. But that's all I've got, guys. I appreciate your support here on the channel as per usual. Let's see. You love some Phil. Me too, man. You say can't be more on board with me with the golf and whatnot. It's Tiger and Phil. Yeah, man. The stuff I've seen about Phil, I love to see that. Hermit loves Phil. Like, thank God there's still some Phil fans out there. Maybe I'm really, really biased because I saw him win his PGA Championship and I was there. He almost hit me with the drive on 18, by the way. I have videos from literally him standing right in front of me, hitting that final shot and winning that damn thing. That crowd, the kind of energy that he had when he was winning that event, unmatched. And I've seen Tiger in contention before, winning an event before. It was like that, if not even worse. I shouldn't say worse, even not better than that. So I hope people come along on him, man. He's done a lot for this sport. Random question, but are there specific players I target for specific props? Like a player to always go under in fairways or over on greens? Yeah, for sure. There are guys that are my favorites. I guess a few to kind of point out. I like unders on fairways on guys that spray it. Like in particular, I've taken a lot on like Rasmus Højgaard. He went over the last time I bet against him though, so I don't know about that. Harman's a good under on birdies or better. He's a little bit more of a conservative player. I really like overs on greens for Aaron Rai. I really like overs on fairways for guys like Tom Kim. It's whatever plays the best for their skill set. So there are definitely some of my favorites like that. And it changes over time too, because sometimes guys go on runs in certain categories versus the others. All kind of comes down to that. He said those two were both draws and you share the same emotions. You said golf was different from 1997 to 2010. It felt like it, man. I wasn't as much into golf as I am now then because I was a little bit younger, but I mean, just all the personalities and all the big names, it looked a lot of fun that time. He said, you want to bring all of them back? Me too. What's going on? You're just checking in. How's everything going? It's going well, but we are ending the live stream right now. So you caught us right before we ended it. You'll end up having to watch it on replay, I'm guessing, but hopefully you have yourself a Friday in your slate. Respect to you out there as well, Hermit. And I appreciate the kind words, Antonio. That's all I've got though, guys. Best of luck, as I was saying there before, and I'll see you guys tomorrow night for the live stream.